All right, we're live. How's it going, everyone? Welcome. I'll probably wait for more people to join in, and then I'll let you do a kind of like self promote your channel and everything, or I can promote it for you.
Nice. Awesome. But yeah, good to be here though. I'm really excited.
Thanks for joining. I know it's kind of early for you.
Hey, not too bad, not too bad. Who needs sleep if you could just hang out with friends and code? That's the best.
Yeah, for real.
I will never say no to awesome opportunity.
Cool. Well, we are gonna in this stream we're gonna be trying to just learn more about Next.js 13. So, like for anyone who doesn't know, Next 13 came out a while ago, but a lot of the things that they provide are actually like beta features. So you actually have to go to like the beta docs, and they give you like a new directory that have new features in it. So we're just gonna kind of play around with that. Like I don't think either um, Coding After 30 and me. I guess I should call you Paul. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
We haven't really played with this at all yet, so we're just going to try to learn on the stream live, which should be fun to watch. And then also, I want him to give me an overview of like Strapi. He does work at Strapi, but I think he also just loves Strapi. Like he
Yeah,
loved
I'll
Strapi
probably
before he even got a job. So
exactly. Strappy lover. Not even gonna hide it.
I don't know how to check how many people are in the stream. Give me 2 seconds to check something.
Do one more tweet.
How's it been working at Strapi?
It's good. I love it. I have a new being at DevRel. It's my first time doing it, so there was kind of I love it, but it's new to me as well. And so where before I used to be, just straight up software developer, so you're coding most of the time, and now it's like 40-60 split, which is interesting. So something new to me, but I like it. It's great. The company is nice.
What's the 60? The 60% is the coding, or is the 60% the actual like
60%?
and...
Yeah, it's more of the DevRel side of things. Part of it, doing meetings. Part of it is figuring out what initiatives to do, doing those initiatives, doing live streams. Working on, trying to get into events and stuff like that. And then 40% is coding. I try to bring it closer to 50. So half of my day is like coding. The other half is all the DevRel stuff. Because in my opinion, being at DevRel, it's like a combination of being like a really good developer and then really good at dealing with community and providing the bridge between like the company and the people that use the product as developers. And so I feel like you need to be both good at both. Whatever. It's early, but yeah, it's really cool. I like the fact that you're involved in the community and working with other people, like talking about the product, creating resources for them to have a better experience using the product, but at the same time listening to them for their feedback and making sure that like the company and our community are aligned.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I know I talked to like Dennis Ivey as well. He's working as like a DevRel or
Yeah.
dev advocate. I'm not really sure, but it seems like it's a lot of fun just to like kind of change it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's the part I like because it has a lot of variety in what you do, especially every company is different. And to me, that's the fun part. It's never just the one thing.
Sorry, I'll probably be clearing my throat a lot. I usually clear my throat in the morning, but yeah. So there's like 30 people or so. If you want to go ahead and just self-promote yourself a little bit, and I'll give a link to your channel for everyone.
You're like super nice. I'm not even ready for this. Like self-promote yourself. Yeah, thanks, man. My name is Paul. I run a channel called Coding After 30 because I started learning to code like in my 30s. So I started to learn development seriously at the age of 36, and I didn't get my job until the age of 39. So it took me some time, right? So there's that, get hired as a full stack developer in 3 months or whatever the timeline by, to me, like, I thought that it's not that easy, and it's not. Surprise. It'll take time. And so I basically created a channel to kind of have a kind of share my journey. I wasn't expecting to turn it into a YouTube channel, but I felt like there's a lot of people that are switching careers late in life and probably find themselves in my same situation. And they're probably getting frustrated because they're trying to do this huge thing. And everybody tells them it's going to be super easy on YouTube, apparently. And it's easy to get discouraged. So I want to give like a realistic expectation of what it's like switching careers, especially when you're older. And the fact that it is possible if you're on the rope and wandering. I think I still would never change anything, except I wish I switched into coding like much earlier. And so that's basically what I talk about. You could find it, coding after 30, basically. And I work at, as Cody said, as a developer advocate at Strapi, the greatest CMS in the world. I'm just going to say it. I know there's others, but I really like it because it's very flexible, and hopefully we'll get to see some of its features. But my favorite part about it, because I'm a mostly front-end developer, although like I like working on backends and learning Node and Express, but I'm also a very big believer in trying to use the tools that you have available to create stuff to be able to go to market faster. And so like combining like a front-end framework with a headless CMS like Strapi allows front-end developers to create these amazing full-stack applications without spending too much time recreating the wheel from scratch. And because you're able to customize pretty much everything in Strapi, like you could create custom controllers, middleware, so you could set policies, so much flexibility that you can actually use it as a stepping stone to start learning backend development, because you could write your own backend development code in Strapi using Node. So that's the cool part I really like about. But that's basically me.
Cool. Thanks for that. And also, by the way, like he does live streams like what, twice a week or something?
Yeah,
Or three
twice
times
a week. Yeah, Friday 9 p.m. CST. If you want to see a grown man cry while he's coding, that's a good time to come. And then Saturday 11 a.m. CST, where I talk about like anything to do with my process of getting hired, like the things I did, what courses I took, the resources, how my resume looks, or like what soft skills you need to have, stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, I love I love watching your streams. There's just a lot of give off a lot of positive energy and good motivation. So he also does streams with Coding Addict. I don't know if anyone here has watched Coding Addict, but
Oh yeah, John Smigla, he's hilarious. Has that dry sense of humor. Yeah, we started doing streams together. Yeah, he's another good dude. Talk about like being positive. I feel like that's the only way to stay motivated in anything you do, is just to be positive, because there's already too much negativity in the world. So if you could just focus on the things that you can control and stay happy, then that's the best way to do it.
for real. Plus, when you're learning the code, it's really frustrating. So you got to just
yeah, that's the
punch your monitor.
That's the big part. The reason I live stream, like two reasons. One, like very selfish reason, is that I just want to get better at talking through my code live, because I feel like the more you code and the more you talk about it, the more comfortable you get with it. And the second is because I want to give people the real perception of what development is, because it's never like this perfect journey where everything just works. It doesn't. And the process of learning is actually stumbling through the documentation if you're just starting out, making mistakes, failing. And that type of learning that you do through this process is going to stick with you. And I know a lot of people are hesitant of trying to build stuff from scratch, or code live, or whatever it is, because they feel like they need to take more tutorials. And the biggest mistake I made on my journey is like I took too many tutorials. I think like after 5, I think you should rethink and just start building stuff like your strategy, and start building stuff from scratch, and really forcing yourself to practice the development part by actually writing code and failing through it. And that failing is actually learning. You're literally learning forward and getting better. And so until I started like live coding, and you don't even have to post it on YouTube, just like do it yourself. I started getting better at this development thing. And then I realized that tutorials, they'll teach you how to learn, but building stuff from scratch will give you the confidence and the experience to actually get hired.
And a lot of issue with tutorials is like, you'll watch the tutorial and they never load up any documentation. They'll just type everything out because they have another monitor and they're showing you exactly what to type, but they don't tell you why you type those things, or like how to connect the dots. But yeah, there's some good points you made there. So do you want to get started with Strapi, or do you want to get started with Next? Like, what do you think would be a better route forward?
Let's do with Strapi. I think we could set up like something like really basic. So we have like an API to call. So if you go to Strapi docs at strapi.io, you're there, and you literally could start with that command, create Strapi app at latest, my project quick start. And the quick start flag basically will set it up using SQLite. So that way you don't have to set up your own like Postgres running on your computer. So that's like the fastest and the easiest way. But we support Postgres, SQLite, basically any SQLite SQL type database. I know there's a lot of Mongo lovers, which is nothing wrong with Mongo, but we stopped supporting it in V4.
I did have a question though. So is this something that you typically run in your current project, or would this be like a standalone API like
So
workspace?
I prefer, so I know some people like to do like kind of one repo where they have their Strapi instance and then they have their front-end instance. I like to keep them separately. And so I would create it as a separate project. And the reason why I do that, because CMS is like a content management system. And I think about it that it might not just only power that website that I'm building. Like for instance, you can, for instance, have your website that you build with Next.js or insert your favorite framework. You might have a mobile app, which is separate from your website, that might be calling your Strapi API to get some data. And if you wanted to, you could actually create an app for like a smart fridge if you wanted to see like whatever you wanted, and have Strapi send data to that as well. So it's literally a thing for you to manage content that you could have many different avenues that you could send data to. It doesn't have to be just your website. So for that, I always like keep it as a separate thing. At least that's how I've been doing it.
Okay, and then for like, let's say you create this quick start project, do you typically just host it by making like a DigitalOcean like VM and just like running Strapi there and pointing it to like your database? I know Strapi probably has some like paid hosting services, right?
Well, we actually, yeah, that's a really good, and we are working on having a cloud solution, which is now in beta. You could go to strapi.io and check out the waiting list for the cloud. And when that comes out, that's really going to simplify the process of, hosting. Because one of the hardest things for front-end developers, if you're not familiar with like DevOps, or you haven't deployed to like different places like Heroku or DigitalOcean, it might be a little bit daunting. So the cloud's going to make it super easy. But like if you want to deploy, there's so many ways. My favorite way is using DigitalOcean, and I'm so lazy that I'll literally just set up their app thing, because the deployment process is fairly straightforward. You just deploy your Strapi and you choose your database that you want. You add your environmental variables and you're all set to go. But Heroku is good. I know a lot of people use, I think, Render, I believe it's called, but there's a lot of options. And of course, you could deploy to AWS if you wanted to. So once your app Strapi builds, you're gonna see like it'll start automatically. But if it doesn't, what you typically would do is you would always run yarn build first, which will build your UI, and then you would run yarn develop to get it started. But for you, it started automatically. If you stopped it to restart it, you could do yarn build and then yarn develop, and you might have to cd into that folder, by the way, because it doesn't switch you automatically. So if you do I do this all the time, even to this day. I'm like, it's like it doesn't switch the folders for me. Okay, it's fine.
I don't know. I think some of them do, some of them don't. Does Next do that when you create like a Next app? Does it cd into
I don't know. I don't pay that much attention. I usually just try to do yarn development. It's like, it doesn't work. I'm not in the right folder.
Usually it's also good in your terminal. Like you can usually have like the location that you're actually CD'd to, but I overwrote that because I don't know why. I think it's for my shorts, because like I don't have enough real estate.
True. That makes sense.
So do you also typically have a VS Code open to the Strapi folder, or is it not really important to even see the code with
So
Strapi?
we could open and take a look at it, but you could literally start with Strapi out of the box. This is one of the things I like about it. If you're a complete beginner, you don't even need to do anything in terms of customizing the code, but you have the opportunity. And right now, like it'll be yarn develop. My kitty cat saying good morning, but I'm like, no, say good morning to you later. Yep. And so, yeah, and because like Strapi gives you so many ways to customize the backend if you want to, it's pretty insane. That's why I kind of use it all the time, because I literally look at it, what Strapi can't do rather versus what can I do with Strapi. So if there's a case where I can't handle the use case with Strapi, then I'll do something with something else like Express or something. But for me, it's been like working pretty well. Yeah, so here just add the basic information.
And this is just inserting all this to the SQLite database?
Yep, so this is going to be inserted to SQLite database, and basically you're creating a super admin user that will allow you to do things within Strapi. Because it's a content management system, you will need a user who can manage the content and do all these other cool things. And I really like this approach because it allows you to continue to work on your code base. Like, let's say if you want building your front end project, but once Strapi is set up, you could start having your content editors work, and add content. So funny, like I overthink the password also, and now for everything I do monkey1234 exclamation point, because I know it's local, will be fine. Or if I'm really lazy, everything is test user.
I need to do that because I'm going to forget this password and we're going to have to restart all this stuff. I'm just going to put that right here.
I was looking at that. I'm like, man, it's too early to write passwords like that. I know it's not that long, but geez. And yeah, so here's the UI. And if you look on the left, the most important part, you have your content manager, which will have content types that you add to your application. If you click it now, we'll just show one content type user that is added to you by default. And then you have also content type builder, and that's where like the magic of the stuff. If you take a look on the left sidebar, yep, after here, this is where you're able to create your content types. And we could go ahead like create a super basic one. If you create new collection type, and the second column from the left where it says content type builder, yeah. You could also, by the way, if you don't like dark theme, you could change it to light theme if you want. To me, I don't have a preference, but if it's going to be brighter, maybe we could do that. I'll show you how to do that. If you go to the bottom left of the application, click that error, that caret, and then that's not the one I meant to say. I lied to you. Click that thing, and then go to profile, and then you'll see, yep, you're so fast. Nice. It's like you know this better than I do. Wow. way to embarrass yourself, Paul. Cody beat you to that. Yeah, but basically, you could change the theme. And if you go back to the content type builder on the left, here you're able to create a new content type. So we probably will do like a simple application today, like a blog or whatever. So if you create new collection type, we could create a thing called post, and then click continue.
Okay.
And those are the different types you have available for your fields. You have text, rich text, number, date. You could do relations. You could do enums. You could scroll down a little bit. There's like a few more items like components and dynamic zones, which we probably won't get into this video, but dynamic zones and components like allow you to create custom components. For instance, you could have a hero section, and you could have that component in Strapi, and then you could map it to your backend and have your front end and have a component called, hero section. And you could literally have editors dictate which component they want to render on the front end based on what they use here in the options. And if you have time, you could explore it. But for now, we'll start super basic. So we could go to the text field, and we could create like a very simple field. You could click on it. I guess a blog post should have a title or whatever you like. And then if you hit the advanced settings for a second, just to kind of take a quick look, you could add like additional features, like things you could make it required. You could add little tests, and the regex is kind of cool too, because anything that, let's say you look through the bottom options, you're like, well, I want to add an additional check. You could literally write a regex that does a specific check and like insert it there if you wanted to. But we'll keep it the way it is for now. So you could go back to basic settings, and for titles you could use short text, and for descriptions I use long text. So you could click finish. I mean, add a next field. I'm like,
and if you click finish, I mean, I can come back.
yeah,
later
if you
and
click
add
finish,
something.
by the way, yeah, it's not going to mess you up. You could just add another field, and then also like we have, you know,
Oh,
a
let me go back.
post could have, let's say, like text, and the cool thing is, like, if you hit add another field, on the bottom or on top, there's a bunch of buttons, and you, instead of like, if you wanted for content and you wanted your content to have like markdown, you could click the rich text editor, and then you could call it content or whatever it is, and then you could click, you know, yeah, that's fine, add another field. And then I know like people like to have like slugs, so you could use our UID field here, and basically when you click that, you could call it slug, and then you could attach that field to like the title, and so that way you could slugify stuff, and you could click.
So is that just like it links some random shorter thing?
So it
to
will
the title?
basically take your title, like whatever you type, like best way to get started with, like, I don't know, foot massage randomly, but you know, and it'll basically turn into a slug for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think this is good for now to kind of get started. And usually what I do, I create the simplest possible thing that I can, and then I make sure that I could get that data. And so now we have our basic post content type, and now you could go to your content manager, and then you could literally just add, I guess we could add an image to actually go to add another field, and you could select like an image type.
I had a technical question for you if you happen to know the answer. So like when I create this collection, I click save, does that like actually do like a database migration on that SQLite? Like, are there
So
different tables for all these collections, or did you guys do something different internally to track this?
yeah, so basically what you're creating now, the data, and we'll take a look in the code in a second, but basically the schema for what your database should look like lives inside the file system in Strapi, but the data lives, you know, inside the database. So let's go ahead and like add an image for a second. So click add another field, find like an image or media field, I believe it's called. Media, yep. And then you could just say image, whatever, and go single media just to make things simple for now. Click finish. And so now we have a basic and save to save the changes. And then we could go create like our first collection, add, or I guess our post, go to content manager on the left menu bar here, and then click create new entry for posts. And then you could add some dummy text.
Let's see what else you guys have here. Bullet points.
Yeah, and the cool thing, like we have Strapi Marketplace. So sometimes like, oh, this like editor is not the one that I want to use. Like we have a couple of different editors you could install via like a plugin or a custom field. So which is pretty cool. And so like the coolest thing about Strapi, if there's a functionality that doesn't exist, you could literally build a plugin to add it to Strapi. So like that modularity approach. And then once everything is done, I think if you scroll up, click save and publish. Very important. And now we basically created our first post. And now if you go to our Strapi code, that in VSCode, if you want to open the code that we installed, we could take a look here.
Let me just go ahead and make another window so we can have two going.
Yep. Yeah, and so like what we just did, Strapi would create like a content type like schema file where basically based on that, everything else is going to be generated. So like the source of truth for like how the database is is structured is going to be here. And so notice how if you look at the API folder, for instance, to begin with, that post, right, folder did not exist. It was created when we created our content type. And when you could open up posts a little bit, the folder, and what it does, it will create the content types. If you click, you'll see the schema JSON there that we took a look at, which is basically exactly what we did in the builder. This is exactly what's happening here. So you could literally type this out in code, and it will be changed inside like your content types on your front end. But the easier way is to do it through the admin panel. But if you had to add stuff or change things, you could do it from here. But basically, this is the source of truth, and based on this is going to generate everything else you need. And then if you take a look at the controllers folders, the routes folder, and the services folders, based on the schema, like it will go and create all the core controllers, all the services using our factory functions. So these are the standard controllers that allow you to do create, read, update, and delete. So if you go back to our Strapi admin UI and you go to settings, so yeah, the first column bottom, go to all the way on the bottom, there's this roles section. You click roles, and we're going to click public for now just to keep things simple. And then here you see we have our content type post, which is also created. If you click on that caret to open it up, you'll see that we have create, find, update, delete, and find one. And those controllers and services were automatically generated for you by Strapi. So if you want to be able to see all and be able to get individual post by ID, you will click the find and find one, and save the changes. And you should be able to now, I don't know if you use like Insomnia or Postman, or you do it from VSCode, or you could literally navigate to localhost and add API/posts, and you should be able to see the return. And bam, we have our post. Now, as you could see here, the one interesting thing, if you look, we have title, we have content, we have slug, but we're not showing any of our relationships. It's like, where's the image? Like, where did it go? And so what we need to do, we need to provide a flag to tell Strapi is like, hey, we want to get the images also. So after post, you could do question mark, like in the URL, and we'll talk more about it in a little bit, and then write populate equals a star. And if you refresh now, you see the image, and you see like the different versions of the image that you have. And so the reason why we have the populate flag and we have other filtering options, and it could get a little bit complex if you're starting out. So for now, we'll keep things simple. But it allows you to basically tell Strapi what data you want to get back. And right now, we're getting a bunch of extra data, let's say from our image like field. Maybe you only wanted to get only like small or whatever. You could actually turn off via filtering, and you could do it from your front end, or you could put this logic inside a middleware on your back end to basically tell Strapi to only return the things that you want. And if that sounds kind of familiar, that's a thing that GraphQL tries to solve, where you want to prevent underfetching and overfetching. And that's usually the main reason why people like to use GraphQL. And so now what we did is we basically wanted to create our REST API to be just as flexible. So, and it does get not super complex, but if you're new to Strapi, it's not like the first thing that I would like dive deep into, like how to do like all these like populate and filtering options. You could also find it in our documentation, but it basically allows you to prevent overfetching and underfetching by only asking for and populating the data that you want. So if someone wanted to use GraphQL just for that reason, underfetching and overfetching, I would argue that you could accomplish the same thing with REST. And we do support both GraphQL and REST. The one thing that I hear, and I'm not a big DevOps guy, but I hear that it's way easier to cache REST responses than GraphQL. That's what I hear, and so I just wanted to put that out there, that we have that awesome filtering flexibility that, unless you have really good reason to use GraphQL for, you'll be fine using REST.
Yeah, and I never even used GraphQL before in production, so I think you're right. Like REST is fine, and then REST, you have your browser is baked in to like cache certain requests from your
Yeah.
REST endpoints, so like you get that out of the box. Versus GraphQL, you typically have to have your client library or something caching some of these things.
Yeah,
But
yeah, and so yeah. So now that we're getting our data, we know our API works, and literally, for the most part, like we've created our API, and as a content manager, you could come in here and you know, change content, add content, yeah, and then now you're gonna get forbidden. So out of the box, like Strapi will, close off all the endpoints until you kind of give permission for them to be
that's cool.
used. And you could
Okay.
also, for instance, if there's also, if you click roles again,
Mhm.
you could also go to authenticated. And this is like, and if you click on post, it'll have the same options. But in order to make these requests, you would have to be a logged in user and pass the JWT token you want. So like the authentication comes like right out of the box for registering users and creating users and then setting up, you know, only having users be able to do certain things if they're authenticated and logged in. Um, but there's like a lot of cool features, and if any one of your followers has any questions, just throw them in the comments. They could take a look at them later. But for now, we have a working API that works. And so what I like to do, I'll set up something basic like this with Strapi, test it with like in the browser to make sure we're getting the data. So I know that works. So now I know my backend portion, although, very basic things we're getting here, like I know it works. So now like what I would do is start working on the front end to be able to consume this data. And this is where we could move and start with Next. And then if you have any questions, definitely ask about Strapi.
Yeah, so Strapi is free to use in open source, right? So like anyone can just do the same setup that I did and just start using that on their business
Yes,
for free and not have to pay anything, right?
100%. So Strapi is always going to be free to use, the community edition. And we do have enterprise edition. And it basically, like, people ask, well, how do you make money as a company? Well, basically we provide support for enterprise users, and we might have like I think we have a feature called single sign-on that is a paid feature that's not available in the community edition. But I mean, like, it's not like something everybody needs. So like for me, like I never used even though I work at Strapi, like I've never used like the enterprise edition. And the coolest things, like you said, that Strapi is open source, and you could literally go to Strapi's GitHub, see all the code to dive deep. You could fork the project if you wanted to, and you could literally do your own modifications if you wanted to. And part of that open source nature, I like the fact that you could dive deep into the code and kind of see how Strapi does things. And that's one thing, like being able to see the code helped me like learn more about backend development. And another cool thing, because it's open source, our community is awesome. If you go to Discord Strap, you could join the community, you could ask questions there. We have our forum, and there's a lot of like people that will help you to with whatever questions you have. And part of my job, like Monday through Friday, like around 12:30 CST, I spend time on Discord answering questions around Strapi with my coworker Derek. And so it's highly customizable. So here, like we were looking at the controllers folder, like before. Inside this, you could create your own controllers, or you could use what you have here. So after like your API posts, you could insert a function. You don't have to do it right now, but you could insert a function which will allow you to basically be able to get. So we don't have to do it today right now. We could come back later, but after, like, you'll be able to insert a function which allows you to overwrite or extend the core controls that we looked at, like create, update, delete, find one, or you could write, completely new controllers. So the interesting thing about actually here is that I saw you use request response. Strapi is actually based on Koa, and Koa only has one like context object, which has everything inside there. And so that's kind of like very like interesting in the sense that I kind of like it where you have that one thing which will have all the, and I think we call it CTX, but the context is fine too. And I don't remember if you have to destructure it, but you'll be able to take a look. And I think right now this is going to actually it should work because you're still returning the create controller. So yeah, you could see if it'll console log it for you.
So is this controller handles all the different Git, post, everything,
So
right?
create core controller, and we could look and dive deep into it. But basically, what it'll do, it will create all the core controller logic for find one, create, update, delete, based on the factory function that we have straight out of the box, and it'll give you like all the functionality to be able to do all those things that you want. It's actually a pretty cool pattern, like something that I haven't used like when creating Node applications. Because normally when I create Node application, I will do, if I go to this route, you know, it will hit this controller, which will call this service. And I find myself always typing those controllers manually. And what I kind of learned, and I'm still learning, by the way, but what I realized is like you could do factory functions that you could pass some sort of like, JSON file to, and use that JSON file to generate all the required controllers and services dynamically, rather than doing them themselves, like typing them out yourself. And that's kind of like a pattern I'm trying to learn about right now. And when I do backend code, I use co-op because this is something that Strapi uses, which is made by the same folks that made Express. It just prevents. They really rely on async await a lot, and it allows you to prevent like the callback hell that a lot of people run into with using, then do this and then finally like whatever, the typical callback stuff. But we could take a look at the documentation later if we want to dive more specific into this.
That's
for
probably
sure.
more advanced, so sorry for jumping into that rabbit hole, but that stuff would be fun to kind of dive into it.
Yeah, and anytime you have questions on like about Strapi, like by the way, I love talking, as you could tell, so I'll be more than happy to talk to you about like Strapi. But basically now we have like a semblance of an API, and if I didn't talk, it would literally take you 5 minutes to set up. And I think that's pretty awesome for people to be able to start building, full stack applications.
Yeah, and like Paul mentioned, like if you want to focus on just being a front-end engineer, like using Strapi to like spin up your own data models and database and stuff can save you a lot of time, so you can just focus on learning the front end. I think he explained that at the start, and I think that's a really good argument as to like why you want to use some type of headless CMS to get started. There's like 2 questions I think in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and put one up.
Awesome.
I think it's for you. I don't know if you can see it. It says, where is the data stored? Can you bring your own DB?
Yeah, so you definitely can. And right now we support mostly relationship databases. So we don't support like MongoDB or any non-relationship databases. And right now, currently, when we set up Strapi, we set it up with a quick flag. So if you scroll up a little bit, there's a folder called temp. .tmp, and right there you have your SQL database, which all the data will be saved. But typically what you would do, and you could use SQL in development, but in production you could set up like SQL, MariaDB, like PostgreSQL. A lot of people use Amazon, and like I'm not like a DevOps person, so I'm not too familiar with the deep features of AWS, but whatever like database offerings that are SQL based, you could use all of them. I typically take the easy way. I deploy to DigitalOcean using their app platform, and then I'll spin up a Postgres database. And I know some folks, when they do development locally, they like to have like a Postgres or a SQL database. So like I've done that in the past before. Well, when creating this project, you could literally point it to your SQL database running locally on your computer and do it that way.
Awesome. Let's see. This person asks, is Strapi easy to use, writing post content for non-tech person, just like WordPress? I mean, I can demo that. We kind of set that up.
Yeah. So it's fairly straightforward. WordPress probably was I wonder if we killed the server or not when we were making the changes. So a lot of times when you type in the controller code, it'll try to rebuild itself, and if something doesn't make sense, it'll kick you out. But yeah, the whole idea for the way Strapi started, initially the goal was to be really like the best CMS geared for developers to be able to get started and build amazing projects quickly. And then as Strapi evolved, we wanted to also be the best that we can be for content managers. So for non-technical people to be able to add content. And so we are striving to create the best experience. And so we did with Cody create our basic blog post, which a non-technical person could come in and edit, and you could demonstrate some of this if you like.
Cool. And yeah, I don't know how much time you have today, but I think we should move on to Next.js just in case you only have like an hour or something.
Yeah, I'm pretty good, but I also want to be mindful of everybody's time because I could sit and stream for like 8 hours if I wanted to.
Yeah,
Talk about
I just see
Strapi
more
and coding.
questions coming in, so I'm like, do we want to answer
We-
those questions or
we
should
could,
we?
yeah,
move
we could
on?
come back to them. So this is the point I want to make. Like when I code, what I like to do is set up the most skeletal thing I can that works. So you have the complete cycle. So you have your backend. We know our backend works. We were able to make a request just now. And so the next step, let's set up our front end and make sure we could pull the data from our front end from our backend. And then once you have that, it's like you have that closed circle, and you know that you're able to create data on the backend and you're able to get data on the front end. And then it's just your imagination continuing to create and add additional features. So let's get to Next.js, which is going to be exciting. Why? Because to me, I think everything is super experimental that we're going to do. And so if we fail, I just want to say, listen, it's the nature of doing the bleeding edge. Would I go Next 13 with these features into production? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think you should. I mean, they literally say beta. Like if you're either docs, it's all beta. Yeah. And then I think they're using like a version of React, which I think the React team just like force merge something before next conference to like be able to do a good demo.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's kind of sketchy, but yeah, we're gonna check it out.
Yeah, we are going to check it out. And for me, this is like really cool. And thank you for kind of inviting me on stream, because I'm glad that we're trying Next 13 because I recently been using a lot of Remix, and I really love Remix and how it does certain things. So I was like really excited that it got acquired by Shopify because we need more competitors for Next.js. But yeah, so Next.js is like super new to me as well, especially 13.
Yeah, but it kind of seems familiar to Remix when I was watching your streams. Like some of this app folder stuff seems kind of familiar, but yeah, we have this app that Paul worked on. It just has like a header and a page, and maybe it has some other pages. If you want to give us like a quick walkthrough of like, I guess maybe like what you added to the app folder. And
yeah, so we could talk about it. And by the way, please keep in mind, I'm fairly new to Next.js. And so basically, you know, if I miss something, don't hurt me, please. But you could correct me in the comments. But basically, when we originally started, it had the, I believe it had page JSX and layout JSX that, and to explain how it works, let me just kind of find my bearings here for a second. Yeah, so when that's the blah, 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 the link. Yep, so this is your index page, your home page. When you land here, that's the first thing you see, and we're literally linking to another page here. So if you change, boom, it's right there. And so they have this concept now in Next.js. And please defer to the documentation, everybody. I'm just giving you my day one experience using it. So if we go back in the code, like they have your page, which is going to be, you could think of it like that's where your HTML lives and stuff like that. And then if you go to your layout JSX page, that's basically think of it as your content layout page that handles how you want to structure the layout. And so when you have the layout.jsx, notice how we're wrapping, you know, all the normal HTML, because that's at the root of your folder. So this is going to be the root of your project, and everything that we have within the page JSX, we're getting access to it via the children props, where in Remix, for instance, they're using React Router under the hood. So you would have access to that. If anyone is familiar with React Router, that'll be like the outlet. But here, yeah, exactly. But here, they have their own way of doing it, where they're getting access to it through children. So if we wanted to create a nested layout, like for instance, I created a folder called posts. And when you click on the page, and we'll talk about this return null. Actually, go for a second to the layout JSX for a second. So let's see here. Scroll down a little bit. I think I'm passing children here. And this is something that's interesting here. So if we go back to page, and the only reason I have to talk about this now is because I'm actually using this. If I don't return null here, and this is just how the layout works here, it's not going to process the layout page the way that I want. And so not to break it, but if we go back to the running application, I'll just try to explain and hopefully make sense. If you click on posts, so and again, I didn't like style this that well, but notice how we have the left column and then we have the right column. So the left column is all the posts, and then our right column is the single post. So if we didn't put return null where we did, basically the left side and the right side, they'll still be rendered at two different places. So posts URL would have the left side, and then when you add a dynamic like ID like 1, 2, 3, it will take you to single post layout view, but you're not going to have side by side. So by putting return null, somehow it's telling Next.js the two children, they're not going to be separate routes, but it's going to be like a nested layout. And if I poorly explain it, it's because I only spent one day on doing this, but definitely refer to the docs. And like Cody was saying, it's very similar how Remix does things. I feel like Remix is way straightforward in terms of setting this up. But now what you're able to do is, if you take a look at the layout JSX here, the code, we have the left side, which is where you see H1 all posts. We're mapping through the data that we're getting back, and that creates the left side. And then the right side is our nested I guess like children, but it always throws me off because I'm always like used to outlet and React Router ways, but that will return everything that we have in our post ID when we pass the param after like the post URL, and that lives inside that layout and that page. So if you take a look at the page, think of the page as your content that will, when you go back to layout, file again here, whatever is in that page JSX, you will be able to render it through that children prop, which is literally similar to what the way you would do it using outlet in Remix or React Router.
Yeah, so a quick recap. We have, just for people watching the stream and for my own education, so I can like really make sure I understand. You have a top level layout, right? And this layout is basically the entire page, but you'll see in the layout we have a header here, and then everything below the header would be like the children, the sub routes would be pushed into that content. So if we go back to like the main page, so this welcome to posts, that's what's getting rendered here in the children, and that comes from this page JSX. But then anytime you have a folder, which is like technically a nested route, that is going to put whatever the contents of page and layout directly into this children's place, right? So if I look into layout here, like Paul was mentioning, we have the links on the left, and then we have another slot to put more information in. So if we kept on making more folders here, it's just going to keep on like nesting those deeper and deeper, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they're definitely doing good things. Like my thing is like it's super beta, and to like make such a big announcement of like a beta feature, I guess it's cool, but it's like, I'm like, if I make someone make a big announcement, I'm like, I want to use it like in production, which is like a bad tip to give people. Don't be like the early adapter to anything. but because you're gonna have very terrible experience. Like my favorite is, by the way, I don't know if you have people in your communities, especially folks who are just starting out learning to code, always saying like the npm package, like, oh, you're not using the latest greatest like whatever node, like, or npm or whatever. And it's like, as soon as there's a new version of npm, people like, how come you didn't update your code to use the latest thing? I'm like, you don't have to. Take it easy, you know.
Yeah, I like other people to go and try the stuff out, and then after about
Exactly.
6 months of them fixing all the bugs, then I'll adopt it because I don't have time
Yeah.
to, like, waste on using something that's beta on my real applications.
I've seen people, and I don't know, like this is like terrible when it happens, but people get so excited about a new thing, and they'll right away start to put it into production on something that might already have like clients on, and something that is like, people are paying for, and then they break something, and it does create a lot of headaches. So yeah, definitely don't be an early adapter. It's okay to try things out and to learn, but just be aware, if you're doing stuff in production, you're working with clients, like the most important part is making sure that you're not introducing any breaking changes that are going to break your client's experience.
So this use hook, I know I read up on it a little bit, and there's, like, new RFC about it,
Yeah.
and it,
So
like if you know anything about it, can you explain
yeah,
it to me?
very briefly. So basically, it's like super experimental, but it allows you to pass anything that will return a promise, and it will resolve the promise like once it's like called. So normally, like if I were to do the traditional way, I would use a use effect. I would have to do like a sync await or something, wait for the thing to happen, and then set it into state and then return it. So use allows you to do that like inside that use function. So basically, get post is basically a sync function that is going to return the promise, and use allows you to use that without having to do a sync await, and basically it will get the post once the promise is resolved, which I think is kind of cool, and it's very similar to use loader, use data loader in Remix. And I'm going to say I love Next.js, but if someone of you haven't tried Remix, definitely give it a shot. It's a really good framework that does certain things like really, really well. And I know we're talking about Next.js, but it's pretty awesome. So like you don't even have to do that, which is kind of crazy, because when I initially did it, I was using, yeah,
Does that still work, though?
yeah, that's cool that if it does work. I haven't tried it. That's actually pretty clever.
Yes, I think the use keyword is sometimes something you can use specifically for client components. At
Oh,
least,
okay.
like, you can
Oh,
use the
nice.
async await if it's a server-side rendered.
Oh,
Um,
nice. That's awesome, actually. So that's cool to know. So yeah, that is fantastic. I like that way more simpler right there. You just using straight up, because I did forget that it's server first in terms of components. So this is actually pretty
yeah.
useful. That's a good point.
There's one thing about Next I'm not really a fan of, where it's like you have to put use client on top of components that are like client components.
Yep,
It just
yep.
seems super hacky. And there's also like, I think it's called like only server or server only.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of this. It just seems really hacky, but hey.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure like they're gonna continue making updates.
I want to also say your comment on Remix, like I was watching that Remix conference kind of,
Yep.
and then also watching some of the videos you've been doing on Remix. I think Remix is a lot more intuitive. Like it's easier to hit the ground
Yeah.
running with.
Yeah.
Next, just no offense to Next, but a lot of it just seems like it's been hacked together over the years. And they're like, now they have the beta app folder and the pages folder. It's just gonna be confusing for a beginner to kind of
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, I have not like I like Next.js, but once I started using Remix, um, for me, like you said, it's more intuitive, and I just feel more comfortable coding because things just make more sense, and I'm able to get stuff done faster. With that being said, though, like I feel like I'm still going to continue to learn Next, and I'm continue going to learn Remix because I feel like if you've been coding for a while, like if you don't know any framework, pick one and learn the basics. But once you've been doing it, it's important to try like different ones
Yeah,
for sure.
and I think Next has a lot of extra features that Remix might not have yet.
Yep.
So Next still has a lot of good options in it. It has like static site generation and the incremental static generation and stuff. So a
Yeah.
lot of cool features in Next and Remix. They're both pretty cool.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Do you
And
want to try to hook this up to Strapi at this point?
so literally you should be able to copy and paste that URL call that we made from from Boom.
Posts. Okay.
Yep. And then you can post it in there, and then we could see, like, it's gonna probably break. Like, you could comment out the map, because they're probably gonna complain that our keys don't match in terms of when we're rendering the data
Oh,
inside the URL here. So we could comment that out for now, and we could console log to see what we get back for posts. See if we are getting the data.
Oh, yeah, and this is server side, so we wouldn't even see it.
Yeah. So
another thing that's confusing to me about these things, it's like you got to keep your mind, okay, this is a server component versus a client component.
Yep. So you see the response, we get in the data, we get meta information, like if you want to do pagination. So you see we are on page 1, the page size is 25. We currently have 1 item. And so if you wanted to get access to the post, it would be inside. So if you do in the console log, you could do, I would do everything here. You could type data.attributes and then .attributes afterwards. And the reason why we have this nesting, like attributes and additional data, is because in the future we're going to do a lot of what is it called? I forgot what it's called. Like, my brain in the morning doesn't work, but like, you know how you do version control with with GitHub? Like, we want to do something similar where people could have different, like, draft and publish, like, version control. So people could have a bunch of different drafts and stuff like that. So we want to be able to have place to stick all the data in. But for now, yeah, you should be able to see all that data. So you see our title, you see whatever. So perfect. So this is like why I like Strapi, is because without really knowing anything about backend, we're able to have an API where people could go in and edit data. So if we wanted to, like, stick to our plan here, we could use this initial data to generate our navigation. We could.
Yeah. I was gonna go ahead and just do a map here, because
you could do that as well too, for sure.
Post data, because data is the array, and I'll map that.
Yeah.
And for every post, we just want to return just the attributes. Just do this, I think, and then that should return all the posts.
Just the posts, yeah.
Just console log this. Okay, so now we just get an array.
Nice. Yeah, perfect. And then I know we have all our data here, but yeah, we could now use that array to generate our site navigation
So we don't have an ID. Should we just use a slug?
Yeah, so we could use the slug. We will have to do some, we'll talk about it when we get there, but let's kind of like make sure we get this showing up, and then we'll talk about it in a second. But yeah, because typically find one, it's using the ID, but I'll show you how you could use the slug without creating like a custom controller for it.
Okay. Can I add another post just to
Yeah, for sure. It's like
so this to show this thing will, like, is actually grabbing the data from the database. I can go into Strapi, I can create another entry and just go ahead and save that. And if you don't publish it, it just won't show up?
Yeah, it just won't show up.
Okay, so save and then publish, and now that data shows up in our post links, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and to me, this was so powerful to me, because as a front-end developer, right, like, you could only build so many like static websites. And I know a lot of people like, oh, I'll just use Firebase, I'll use whatever. And to me, nothing wrong with that. But I feel like creating an application where you're using like the most popular database, like, which is like a relationship based database like SQL, Postgres, whatever, just makes more sense, because majority company, like pretty much all companies I worked at, they all use like SQL based databases. So I think getting familiar with the concept of how to make API calls to get the data, having basic understanding of what a database is, how it's connected, and then but at the same time, you don't have to worry creating this stuff from scratch. So you could literally create really awesome full stack projects as a front end developer. And to me, that was just super powerful because it makes you stand out, you know.
Yeah, I wish they had this when I was learning how to code. Like this would have made it pretty easy.
It's like you have to do everything yourself. So now we're getting the data. So, and if we click on it, we are passing the, we're passing the slug. So now like we want to be able to get access to this single like item of our post. So if we go back to Strapi for a second though, and we go to our settings again, go into roles, and then click public, click posts. And then if you click on, like we're getting our single post using the find method, that would be like the way of doing it. But in our straight right out of the box way, find works by using the ID to fetch the post. But because we are no longer using the ID and we want to use the slug, we will use find one instead, and we will filter by the slug, which is fine too. But more appropriate approach would be, if you wanted to use the slug, you could create a controller, find by slug. So once you would do that, you would have, find, then you could have the custom control you created, find by slug, where you literally just pass the slug and we'll get the data. But we could talk about it later. For now, we're just going to do this simpler approach by using find one. And gonna
How would that change? You said I would have to use like a filter here, or to have to use...
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you that in just a second.
Oh, yeah.
There's one thing like I want to find. I don't remember where I put it. Yeah, I'll I don't know if I could share something. Let me see if I could message this for you. StreamYard, private chat. So I send you this link that you could like bring up on screen. And so there's a REPL I sent. So here's like the thing. So if you look at the URL, we're doing like populate, we're passing like whatever flags and whatever it is inside the query string inside the URL. To write that manually is a pain in the butt. So instead,
I gotta click.
they're really asking you the hard questions. Listen, it's like, how many chickens look like a chicken? It's like ridiculous. And so basically what you would use a library called QS. So we'll have to install it. And what that allows you to do, that allows you to write your filtering and populate in a way more human readable way, which will then create your URL string, which if you're doing like deep nested filtering could get really complex. So in Strapi, we recommend using QS to generate your query string. So what I would do next is to install QS for Next. And you don't have to use it. I'm just saving you a lot of headaches of trying to manually write query strings.
Yeah, I think I've used this in the past.
Yeah.
So I think that should be good.
Yeah, and then you could copy that example, like, and that would be inside our single post where we're going to get the data. So if you go to post ID inside, inside the page, and so you could post that above. And basically what we're doing, and for us, you could just delete populate because
delete the whole thing.
Just delete. Actually, hold on. I lied to you a little bit. Delete block that image, block links because it's from like a different project, and actually delete. You could. There's a bunch of ways of doing it. That's why I'm kind of stumbling along. You could delete the array part. And you could do just populate, and then inside block image, pass that star that we were passing, which will basically populate all the first level relations. Kind of like where we did the question mark, populate equals star. Here you just put star, inside. So after populate, just put the star instead of block that image. If that makes sense.
Oh, just put this?
Yeah. So, and basically what this is going to do is
Oh.
going to create that query string, which is going to have the populate flag that we passed earlier, and then the filter. And so this should, in theory, work. So what we want to do is, instead of
It looks like you're doing something like this.
Yeah. So let's see here, post ID param. So we are going to exclude post ID because we're literally just going to do posts. So slug, we're going to pass into the params function. So, yep. And then, yeah, so that should work right there, I believe. We could.
Oh, I kind of messed up the code, but this was a function before, but now we're passing slug here.
Okay, I got you. Yeah. So never mind. Yep. So as long as we pass slug in there and we kind of return, and then I think we might have to put like the question mark after posts. I don't know if that, like, console log params and see what it returns. Yeah, just to kind of do like a sanity check.
Let me fix this URL to actually be the right one. I think it's what, localhost leet.
Localhost 1337. Yeah.
I like the port name.
Nice.
API posts.
Post. Yeah, that should be it.
You're saying I should probably restart next app. And since this is server-side rendered, I should basically see this console log something. Yeah, no question mark here.
Yeah, populate. Yeah, so yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so yep, that should work. Perfect.
So that'll do us like a smart query in the backend and just give you back the results that match the slug, and then
exactly. And again, like we did it this way where we're passing as a param, but you could literally have, like, because right now the way we have, like, anybody from the front end, they could ask for whatever they want. So what you could do, you could create like a middleware in the back end or inside the controller to put this logic there. For instance, like if someone goes to make a query based on slug, you just want to give them just that one option, get things by slug, and not let them get extra things. So you could create a separate control in the back end that actually has that functionality. And instead of doing filtering on the front end like we're doing, you would literally just pass the slug as a param, and then it will just return the data that you want.
Okay, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, let's see if this actually works. I went ahead and refactored to not use the use keyword anymore. And
yeah, no, I like that. That's actually a good point because I didn't realize that, the fact. See, I'm glad I came here learning.
That's one thing about coding. There's always like 101 ways to do this.
Oh no, 100%.
And is this working though?
We could console log see, like, is it getting the data?
Oh, yeah, I think I deleted that. So let me add that back. Let me just console log that post.
Yeah, and this is what I love about, like, I know you have, like, obviously, like, way more followers, but I feel like a lot of people like watching, like, talking head videos where people talk a lot about nothing. But when it comes to live coding, like, nobody wants to watch no live coding. And it's just like, it's a shame because this is where you get like a lot of learning. I wish I had more time in my world. Like, I would watch even more like coding stuff because I like seeing how people do things. And you just learn so much because you kind of see in real life, like, how people think about what they're doing. And I kind of like, watching you code right now because I'm like, it's pretty awesome. And I feel like more people should do it. In general, people should code more than watch videos.
So one thing I'll say is that my company, for the past, like, however long I've been there, we do a lot of pair programming and mob programming. So we're all coding together in a Zoom for like hours every day. Wow. And that's actually the one way I actually learned as much as I did, is because when I first got hired as a junior, I had no idea what I was doing. And I had to pair program with like a lot more experienced people. I was like the youngest person on the team, and I was working with a bunch of seniors, and I had to pair with them every day. And so by the end of the first year, like, there's so much stuff that I learned, and it's just a great way to learn, is watch other people code, and they'll show you like tips and tricks and stuff.
Yeah, that's so awesome. That's actually, your company is pretty awesome if it does that, for sure, because not every company does that. And I think any company that does something you mentioned, like really cares on helping their developers just become best developers at the company, which is pretty awesome. Nice. And look at that, like literally, if I didn't talk for half the time I did, it would take us 5 minutes to set up the API. And then if we didn't have to mess around with like the fact that Next.js is new and in beta, in 10 minutes, you have a full stack application.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Are we rendering out the right stuff? This is the how to get started. This is the title.
Yep.
But then we're not rendering out.
I think content. I think that's what it was, post content.
Then you could potentially bring in some type of markdown previewer, because this is markdown, right? When you do the rich text.
Exactly. So that's markdown right now. And so if you wanted to render correctly, you would have to get some sort of, I forgot what Next.js used in my old blog that I built with Next.js. Yeah, I just basically put in whatever the popular library to read markdown.
And I'm sure it's just a simple npm install. Are you saying that it might have something built in by default?
No. Yeah, it's a simple npm install. Just find a package that you like and do whatever you want with it. But it's pretty cool, and I really like the direction Next is heading with the layout routes. I think it adds like a really good flexibility that, without having to duplicate a lot of code, was like really hard to do in Next.js. And I know, like, I talk about Remix, I talk about Next, we all have our opinions. And I remember one day asking somebody, what is the best framework to use for a project? And the answer was like the framework that your company is using where you get paid. That was like the first answer. And the second answer is like anything that you feel you're going to be the most productive with. And I like that answer because there's no right answer except what is the right thing for the particular project you're working on. But Remix is pretty awesome.
I definitely agree. All these languages and frameworks, like if you really take a step back and look at them, they all achieve the same thing. So just pick a stack that you want to get good at and just stop jumping around between tech stacks, because it just kind of hinders your progress.
Yep.
And as long as you learn like the overarching like ideas that are involved with programming, web development, you can easily switch between Remix or Next, or I mean, either of us could probably pick up like Laravel with PHP and learn that in a couple of weeks. Like, we kind of understand the general idea of how websites work. There's a question. 1 second.
Yeah, we could take a look at questions and stuff.
So Heem says, one question: what should we memorize and what should we know when we code our React application? Mapping an API from backend and transferring to frontend, connecting Firebase. I mean, in terms of what you memorize, I think the things that you find yourself doing over and over and over again when you're building an app, like those things, I would put more effort into trying to memorize them. If you can't, like, let me give you an example. So I use TypeScript now. I've been trying to learn TypeScript, and when you make like on-click callbacks, typically you have to add types to the function. I think I've done that maybe 40 times by now, and I keep forgetting what the type is. It's like React.change event. But it took me 40 times before I decided to stop and just be like, I need to memorize this because I cannot remember it for some reason. That's my advice, is just like memorize things that you find yourself typing over and over again. And Paul, if you want to take that off as well, like whatever you want to say about that.
No, I was going to say that's a great advice. One thing that I find myself doing when I like kind of like using the example you just showed, I'll do that once somewhere in my code, and I'll set up that like template, if you will. And then I used to in the past find myself copying and pasting it because it's easier. I'll be like, oh, I've done this before, like in this file, so let me copy and paste. And what I saw somebody else do is that they stopped copying and pasting stuff and they started typing things out. So they actually go through the repetition of repeating the commonly things that like using in code. So like the tip would be, number one, it's do what Cody said. Just take some time and like, let me memorize this. And number two, if it's something new that you're learning, like type it out yourself, even though I know it's easier to copy and paste things like from an example that you found, but literally type it out because it'll help you to kind of get that repetition of doing yourself. So that's something I started doing again more of to help with the learning.
Yeah, I think you use Copilot as well.
I do use Copilot. And people, like everybody has like mixed opinions. I use Copilot for two reasons. Number one, like I suck at typing and I probably should dedicate more time for typing. And so Copilot, if I did something bunch of time in my code, it's smart enough to kind of be like, oh, this is what he wants to do. And then I'll start. And the second thing I like about Copilot, sometimes I'll be doing something I'm not quite sure like how to do. And so to me, like Copilot is like Googling inside your VS Code. And so it will give me a bunch of stuff. And then I'm like, oh, I've never seen this approach. And then I'll go research it and I'll try it out like by itself and be like, oh, that's kind of cool. And sometimes it'll give you things that you didn't think of, but sometimes it'll give you complete garbage. And so like Copilot doesn't 100% will write your code for you. It's just a faster way for me to see a couple of different options that I have, but you still should know what your code is doing to be able to be like, okay, this totally works or this doesn't work. So I think Copilot just helps, but at the end of the day, you need to know like the code it recommends. But yeah, I do use Copilot. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, I was using that until they made it paid, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But then I found myself like forgetting how to type really basic stuff. I'm like, hold on a second, is this helping me or not? But one thing I will say, like, if you want to learn a new language, buy Copilot, and like you could load up a new, like, I don't know, a Rust script, and then say a for loop, and then it'll tell you exactly how to do a
It's
for loop
pretty
in Rust.
insane. Yeah.
It's like the best way to learn a new language
Yeah.
or framework because it like knows everything about it already.
Do you contribute to any open source projects, by the way, or no? Yeah, because I think like if you contribute to an open source project, you might. I think there's a way to get Copilot for free.
Oh,
Yeah, but yeah, don't quote me on that. I think that's what I heard somewhere. But to me, yeah, it exactly for the reasons you mentioned. It's just another tool that helps me to learn things and explore things at a faster rate. I think don't think of Copilot as something that will do your job for you, but think of it as a tool that will help you get better at what you do. And definitely, if Copilot spits out something that you don't know, I definitely go and dive deeper into the code.
sure. Let's see. Someone says, thanks for the wonderful session. Adobe, he's someone who's on my Discord like all the time.
Nice.
So welcome to the stream.
Yeah, you're very engaged on your Discord is pretty hopping. Like I use Discord at work, and so I have like Discord exhaustion. But it's cool to see Discord communities which actually do the thing that they're there for. So I saw a lot of coding stuff, a lot of coding questions, and it's pretty happening.
Yeah, I think my goal is like, you ever go on Stack Overflow and you ask a simple question and then people just like tear you down?
Yeah. Oh, I
So
have a story about that.
I'm trying to avoid that. Like my Discord is supposed to be like a friendly place you join, ask a question, and hopefully someone will, give you an answer. But it's sometimes hard to please that because people get kind of annoyed with,
Yeah.
how do you do a for loop? It's like, okay, come on now.
Yeah. I think for beginners, like it's something that I had to learn to do is to basically understand the etiquette of asking questions. Like you should at least try the thing that you're stuck on and find a solution yourself at least 3 times. And if you don't find a solution, you shouldn't be like, how do you do a for loop? It should be like, this is what I tried and this is the code that I wrote. I'm having difficulty, like you have to like take it like, you got to put some effort to show that you did best due diligence to find the answer yourself. And when you pose questions like that, people will help you. But if you're asking someone how to clearly do something without like any effort, people are going to ignore it, not because they're mean, but because there's just so many questions. And a lot of times it's just very hard to answer all of them, especially when you see someone doesn't respect your time because they didn't try to put any effort into finding the answer. So definitely do that for sure.
Yeah, sometimes people will join and say, this is like one of the nitpick things that people get annoyed with. Someone joins and says, I need help with Next.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, can you like describe maybe like one sentence using some more words? Like what are you running into? But again, it's like we're trying to make a safe space where you can ask questions. So like it's just probing for more information is kind of the annoying part of like.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you said safe space. So let me tell you a story. And if anybody's listening who's like looking to get started into coding, I could have started learning to code like way earlier. And I had a very terrible experience on Stack Overflow when I was like around 30. And mind you, if you know my story, I started learning to code seriously around 36. And here's the reason why. I was like maybe 31, 32. Like I went on Stack Overflow and I asked, is it too late to learn to code in your 30s? Literally, I was 32, 31. Like if you're 32, 31, start learning to code. You have plenty of time. Like it's fine. But I asked that question and all the responses were so negative. And one of the comments literally told me to jump off. Like they said, it's too late, just jump off a bridge. And I felt so discouraged that I literally gave up learning to code in my early 30s because I was just like, oh, maybe they're right. And I just believed them for whatever stupid ass reason. And like that what upsets me is that you may make a negative comment as a joke or to troll someone, but you don't know how it's going to affect the end user. You might have like discouraged someone from literally taking action on a life-changing thing that will improve their life. And so to me, like my policy now, like, and I'm nice, not because like I'm nice, I could be mean, believe me, but my policy is that being nice just goes way farther in life. And you also, like you said, have the safe space where someone online could genuinely like be looking for some real advice. And if you dismiss him or say something mean, you're not thinking about the consequence it might have on them. And so for me, I want to avoid that. I want to make sure that the content I produce as best as I can is positive in a way that if someone finds themselves like I did when I was in my early 30s and they ask a question similar to mine on like Stack Overflow or my community, they're not going to get a negative answer that's going to, like in my case, discourage me from learning to code for another like 3-4 years of wasted time. And so that does, like when I see negative comments, I do get like upset about it. But you know, people are people.
That sucks too, because I feel like there's a lot of like toxic people in this.
Yep.
I want to say the industry. I feel like you got to be a normal person to get hired in this industry. At least I would hope so.
Yep.
But the people who are like trying to learn, like not trying to learn. I don't know how to say this without sounding mean, but there are some people who are toxic, and like you just need to find the people who are like willing to help you get better and progress.
Yeah.
And I do want to also just say, if you are watching the stream, be sure to like it.
Yep.
And also go ahead and go to Coding After 30's channel. I put it in the chat. Click the subscribe button and the bell icon on his channel.
Yeah. And I'll do like a quick shout out to like while you're here. If you go to strapi.io, like our website.
IO.
Yep. And then you see in the top menu, the cloud, you see the cloud landing. We actually have a waiting list. If anybody wants to try out the cloud, basically it'll allow you to deploy Strapi to the cloud very easily. So you could go ahead and sign up for the waiting list. We are in beta right now, slowly introducing users in waves. So if anybody's looking for a cloud solution and you like what we demonstrated here with Strapi, you could definitely check it out. And like I said, using Strapi is free. And so, you know, you could locally spin it up and try the things that we did in today's video. And if you want to dive deeper into Strapi, you could also go to the Strapi docs. But if you have questions, you could literally hit me up on Twitter, coding30, or go to my YouTube channel, because I mainly make content with Strapi and Remix or Next or whatever. And again, like Cody said, I'm not using Strapi because I'm a Strapi shill. I use Strapi prior to working at Strapi. And so like I use Strapi because I'm a lazy developer, and my goal is to create something that I could go to market faster. And that's why I use it. But you don't have to use Strapi if you don't want. Listen, I'm just telling you my thing, you know.
I mean, the only reason I started like looking into it is because I was watching some of your streams, and I'm like, yeah, it does seem really easy to like just get some data there, especially if you need a CMS.
Exactly, super fast. So here's like the reason I get excited about Strapi is before I started working at Strapi, I got hired as a React developer for a financial company that already had a product, and all of their backend was built with Python. And they had very busy backend Python developers that if they wanted to do something brand new, they just couldn't justify taking away their senior level guy who does all the Python stuff and to try something new. So I literally proposed to them as a front-end developer. I'm like, hey, like I know you have this idea for a minimal viable product, like let me build it. And I could do it by myself because I'm going to use whatever React, because that's what you want. But to create a basic API, I'll just use Strapi, and we could create an MVP, and you could make a decision if this is something you want to pursue. So we ended up creating I was able to by myself create the MVP with React and Strapi. I didn't have to be a developer, like full stack developer, because Strapi makes it super easy to do when getting started. And so that was an easy sell for me, because to my the higher manager of the company, he's like, oh, I don't have to bug my Python developers to start a new thing that might have great potential. Great. And so I created an MVP that the board liked, and then they gave me a green light to those like POC, so first proof of concept. But then we created an MVP that I built out like 70% of the application, where they're like, okay, we're able to get users, we're able to see where it's going. And then based on seeing that there's demand, we're already testing users, they hired like 3 more developers to continue with the project, and then they brought it to market faster. So what I like about it is you could start on ideas with front-end developers that could take the project most of the way, at least to prove the concept of the thing you're building, and then you could bring more developers. And what ended up happening, we built out this thing, and then eventually their backend developers freed up, and we had a talk like, okay, we are at a point where we know the service work, we are able to get clients, as the concept works. And then they're like, we can, if we wanted to, integrate it into our current application and recreate the API using Python. But then they ended up just staying with Strapi but it already works. We already have like users that are paying for the service, so why not? And so I like that it gives you a chance with a team of more front-end developers to create a really functioning full stack application. And because the front end's JavaScript, the back end's JavaScript, from hiring standpoint, it's like very easy. Like you just need a JavaScript developer. And to me, that's the power of Strapi, is that it allows you to benefit of what Strapi created to create things faster and go to market faster. And if you watch my streams, I'm kind of trying to build, I guess you would call it a SaaS eventually. I don't know what I'm doing with it. Like it'll probably never get deployed, but I'm literally creating a thing called Dev Hunt, which I want to create a place for aspiring developers to go and find people to pair program with. Like that's the idea. Like I don't know what's going to happen, but my goal is not to, how could I make the best software ever? It's like, what is the most minimal viable product that I could bring to market faster to get some beta users that could give me feedback? And if I had to do everything from scratch, it would take forever. But now with like Strapi and like Remix, like I'm able to do it fairly quickly. And I'm really excited about it, because to me, like if you try to go to market faster, like why take a path that will take you longer? You know what I mean? And so that's the cool part.
Yes, at this point, like it's good to learn those things when you're like starting off, but when you get more experience, like you don't want to reinvent the wheel. Like you want to find tools that solve the problems for the business, and that's really the main focus, is on the business and how do you make profit for the business. So if you spend a whole month building out like a custom CMS that you could have had spun up in 5 minutes, are you helping the business, or are you just having fun, like learning some tech?
Yeah. And that's absolutely true. And I think like as developers, we always want to do cool things, build stuff from scratch, which is great, like for learning, but no business person is going to be happy with you doing that if there's a better, faster way of solving business needs. I worked at a company which literally tried to build everything from scratch, where I told them at that time, like my feelings have changed about, what is it? I don't even remember, like the React, the Google front-end library. Was it I want to say MCU, but it's not MCU. Material UI. Is that, by Google. So I told them, just use Material UI. Just do it. It's fine. You don't have to like it or love it, but you have everything there that you need. And they're like, no, we have to make custom components, everything. And literally, we were in production for 1.5 years because our team, a very small team of 5 people, was working on trying to recreate like their own like front-end library that we could use. And so I worked at that company for 1.5 years. We never went to deployment, like production to real customers, because we were too busy. And if they built thing with Material UI, right, they would have went to deployment like 6 months earlier. And so they could have had paying customers, but instead they decided to do their own thing. And I'm like amazed that the company's still not out of business. But you have to be smart. Like, what resources do we have as a team? What are we willing to take on? And for business people, they literally only care about how quickly we could go to the market to satisfy the business needs of our customers. And so a lot of times, like, building stuff from scratch and not relying on things that exist and make our jobs easier is actually not a smart business idea unless you have like very specific use case where you need to build something specific. Then it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely agree with all that. Hey, I need like a 2-minute break, but I'm gonna put a question up for you. It's a Strapi question. I don't know if you can answer it.
Yeah.
And I'll be back in like 2 minutes.
That's a great question. Is Strapi an overkill for an inventory management system? I don't think so. Like, especially if it's, I mean, it all depends. Like, if you use Strapi, like, you don't have to write that backend code yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you don't use Strapi, you would have to create that backend logic. And I know it might not be complex, but I now that I think about the question, it really depends on your use case. Like, obviously, if it's a simple inventory management system, you could create that backend yourself. The benefit of Strapi that I like is that, first of all, a lot of that functionality comes out of the box, and the second thing is that you have access to the admin area where you are able to see all the items in the inventory, and if you wanted to change something, you can do it from the admin area that Strapi provides. In the case where you didn't use Strapi, like, you would have to create that functionality yourself. You would have to create that admin area, and you would have to create an API. But what I would say, and I might be a little bit biased, one reason I'm lazy, number two, like, I really love Strapi, and number three, for me, the way I look at it, it's Strapi already exists. It's like I tell people, like, it's the case for WordPress. Like, back in the day, I used to do a little bit of WordPress development, and the way they used to sell WordPress as a thing is they say it's 10,000 hours of work that you don't have to do. Somebody created WordPress, they already did the hard and heavy lifting. So literally, you're standing on the shoulder of giants and you're just extending the thing they created. And that's kind of how I look at tools and Strapi. Like, if you're creating stuff, like, obviously, if you're learning to code, you should learn the things anyway. But when you want to build stuff and go quicker to market, I believe, like, it's okay to save yourself some time. So I look at Strapi as the 10,000 of hours of development that I don't have to make. And, talk about Strapi is an overkill. If you saw that it took us 5 minutes to get started, so, like, something that, like, the barrier to entry is, like, so small, like 5 minutes to get started with it. I'm like, why not try it, and see. And then you could really quickly tell, oh, this might be an overkill, or, oh, this is perfect. And then you could make a decision. But yeah, hopefully that answered your question, so.
Yeah, one thought I had with that, if something's overkill, I think it's always good to just try using anything, but whatever you're using, whatever framework or library or setup, make sure that you own your data in case you need to migrate that stuff off. So I think Strapi is good in that aspect because, like, it's literally you point it to your SQLite database.
Yeah, you own your data.
Yeah, you own the data, so you can transfer it off if you need to.
Yeah, that's like one of the, like, selling points. There's a lot of companies that offer, like, cloud solutions or something that's online and hosted, but whenever you do that, like, with other companies, you don't control that data. And for some businesses, anybody in finance or anything like that, like medical records, like, you don't want to share that data with someone who, like, doesn't own it, and so a lot of people, like, use Strapi for that fact, is that they decide where their database lives. If you have your own, like, server on AWS, if you have your own thing, like, and I like that flexibility of it.
Yeah, and I think going off that same point, I think Firebase is an example of where you don't own your data. Like, maybe they
Yeah.
have ways to export all the Firebase data into like a SQL dump file or something, but I think they have their own special way that they store their data, and it's very hard to get it out of their system. I could be wrong though, so correct me if I'm wrong. Or maybe it's the
Yeah.
users that log into your Firebase, you don't get to be able to, like, export them.
Yeah, like, I stopped using Firebase for a while, but basically, yeah, hosting your database on Firebase, and again, you have to make a decision. The data that you have, like, so important that, like, if you trust Google, and it's fine, like, whatever. But that's something good to look into. One thing that I actually wanted to say about Firebase is, I know there's a lot of tutorials that teach Firebase because it's very easy to set up. But in the past 4 jobs I had, none of them had Firebase listed as, like, a job requirement. But a lot of them had, like, SQL, like, whatever, like, the true and trusted like databases, which were mostly like relationship based. And after my first job, where I literally got thrown into working on the front end, but I had to work with like SQL databases, which up to that point I've never worked with because I was too busy doing tutorials with MongoDB or Firebase. And so I literally felt unprepared in that regard. And like the first 3 months of my job like was like really painful. So what I started doing is I literally stopped recommending people use learning Firebase. And again, this is my opinion. And then MongoDB, for two reasons. Like I'm older, and so I don't have time to like learn things that I might not have to use at work. So I want to be really focused to get better at the most common technologies that you would see in job applications. So to me, it's relational database and SQL. And for me, that's why I like Strapi, is because I'm working with common databases that I would see like in the wild. And so if anybody finds like Firebase job posting, please let me know. Like, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, most of the projects I've been on in the past, they've all been SQL.
Yeah.
Like there's just so many SQL databases on every single project. So it's like, I would probably just learn SQL, honestly. Like a lot of beginners learn MongoDB, which I think it's great for learning, but I've never been on a real app, like a real project that's paid me to write for Mongo. So take that as you will. But someone else asked if is Strapi expensive to self-host?
It really depends like what you're doing, because hosting is like a whole rabbit hole that I don't know too much about. And when I say that is because like there are whole professions like in DevOps around like the topic. But for me, for my use case, I literally just use DigitalOcean, use their app platform, because I don't know enough about deployment. So it's the easiest way where I pay like the company money to just, so I don't have to worry about it. But you could use their I forgot what it's called. It's not their applet. It's like they're basically you make your own like little, I forgot what it's called, to be honest. But if you go what they have applets, droplets, that's the one. Like you could create your own droplet, but that involves a lot more initial setup on your part. And so what somebody told me, if you're not familiar with Linux, you're probably going to have like a tough time setting up a droplet, just because it does ask a lot of stuff that you have to do yourself. And so I use the app. It's super easy. And then also like some people will, let's say, throw their thing to AWS, and then they have, and again, like I don't know too much about DevOps, but they have like, all these things that are managed by AWS and different redundancies for the database. And what happens if you get DDoS? Can your thing handle? And then when you start talking about all that stuff, like the more of that stuff you talk about, the more expensive your hosting gets. So you could literally, like when I was talking to businesses that host their stuff with AWS, like it's not uncommon to spend $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And people go, holy Jesus. But I mean, these are like serious businesses that make in revenue, and they need all these additional features to make sure, they experience the least amount of downtime as possible. And so what I would say for me, my process is I'm going to start with the app platform on DigitalOcean. And as my need and my revenue grows, like I could scale that eventually or switch to something else. But if like it really depends on your needs, like, but the cost of managing your own stuff does go up fairly quickly the more features you add.
Yeah, I'll definitely second that. Like Amazon's great. They have so many different things to build a really resilient system, but you have to factor in the amount of time that goes into learning how to deploy to Amazon. Because like on our project at work, we use like tons of different Amazon services, and then we use Terraform to like provision all these services automatically. But the amount of like engineering hours that went into build a system that can work on Amazon took so much time and effort that I kind of wish that we had the ability to just like do an app deploy where you point it to a repo and it deploys everything onto like a single couple boxes.
Yeah.
But
and I think
when
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just gonna agree with that. Yeah, like for me, this makes sense. And this way, like I don't have to worry about all this. Like, cause literally, like for me, I need to literally get the AWS certification to make sense of anything like with AWS. And there's just a lot of learning. And for me, like at the moment, I just want to build my application and not struggle with the
Mhm.
deployment part of it. Because DevOps, it's like its own career thing. You know what I mean? And so,
Yeah. When you deploy Strapi, do you just typically do this one, like a Node app?
yeah, you could do that. Yeah. That's basically what I do. And literally super easy. It'll just ask you to point to your GitHub, and then they'll ask you to define like what kind of database you want to fire up. And so, yeah, for me, this is literally the best way of someone who's starting out to do. Which brings me
Yeah, I
to
love.
like this question. There's like so many people that, oh, become a full stack developer in 3 months. Like obviously, like whatever. It's but to me, like the more I've been learning to code and working, the more like suspect I get how long it becomes to become like a full stack developer. And I know it's like a loaded question, but I tell like when people ask me, are there like junior full stack developer jobs? And my answer is no. And then people get mad at me. But the reason why I say that is because, in my opinion, full stack is not a junior position. Like to me, I feel like you need to understand the front end pretty well, and then you need to understand back end pretty well, which is not just, oh, I could create a node like API. It's like understanding how to troubleshoot database, how to troubleshoot the deployment process. And I don't know, do you share like similar opinion, or what's your take on that? And I know that it's a broad take, and so like, it's
Yeah. Um, so I think when you get hired as a junior, you're probably going to be focusing on one area. Let's be honest, there's too much to learn. And I think when it comes to backend, there's a little bit more responsibility because like you could accidentally delete all the data, which means your company is going to be basically bankrupt at that time, unless you like do backups and stuff. So I think when you get hired as a junior, you're going to be focused on one probably, and you'll slowly learn the different areas of the stack if you need to. I mean, I think being full stack is good. A lot of people don't like the term full stack for some reason. Like, I think it was hyped up at one point, and I think people got tired of it. But I think even if you're a front end engineer, knowing how the backend works and understanding like why certain headers are
yeah,
set or why certain things are the way they are, it really helps you become a better front end engineer. And same with backend engineering. If you understand like why the front end has to do things the way they do, like why can't you just do a certain request a certain way? I think it helps you build better REST APIs. Um, I mean, I'm like a full stack engineer on my current project, and everyone on our team is considered full stack. Like, we don't have one person who specializes in the front end or one who specializes
yep,
in the back end. We're supposed to, we call it like cross pollinating. So everyone knows a little bit about everything in the system. So if
yeah.
half the team were to quit, the other half of the
You're
team
still
still
good.
understands how it all
Yeah.
works.
And,
Um,
yeah, yeah. And that's smart approach. Like what I would say, like for me, I decided the fastest way for me was to get into the industry is go the front end route. And I like if someone like really hates front end, you could go like back end route. But I feel like if I chose to do full stack, I'd probably still be learning in order to get a job. So I think like having focus
mhm.
that you could kind of work towards to get a job, because once you get hired you could start right away learning like and spreading your like understanding, because that's what happened to me. I got hired as a React developer, but at my job I was also required to interact with the API, which was like written with like C sharp, and so I started right away learning like C sharp on the job. And I feel like get hired first and then try to branch out, because there is so much to learn. I was going to ask you your opinion on learning to code in 3 months and getting a job that pays 150K.
Oh, I, I,
Let's talk about it.
I
First of
think
all,
I think there are some people out there who are super smart. I've met people who are like
yes,
brilliant, and those
not
are
me.
like the less than 1%. Yeah, not me either.
Exactly.
Like, I had to work hard. Like, I remember in college I joined the programming team, and like I was around all these people who could like solve all these leaks in like 5 minutes. I'm sitting there for like hours. Like, I don't understand what's going on. So there's people out there who are really smart, and they could probably learn to code and get a job in like 3 months. But I think for the vast majority of people, like it's 6 months to a year minimum, I think.
Minimum, yeah, minimum. I was gonna say, yeah, like the 3 months of getting a job, it's like someone who gets chosen for the NBA. It's like they're talented, they're smart. They know what. Yeah. So I found out that like after talking to a lot of people will watch like YouTube videos. There's a lot of videos how somebody did X in 30 days and now like has a, Lamborghini or whatever. And so you get this idea that this field is way easier to get into than it really is. And I find that new beginners, they'll use that as an expectation. And then after 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year and a half, they still like, I'm not there yet. Maybe I'm not smart enough. And no, it's not that you're not smart enough. It's that you don't have the right expectation. Like it is hard. It is. So don't worry about like how long is it, how fast can I get hired? Just focus on how like smartly can you study to get to a point where you feel competent to be able to build an application and a portfolio for your resume and start looking for jobs, and however it takes you, that's how long it takes you. But don't try to rush the process.
Yeah, and I would probably say like any career that pays well probably means that there's some type of difficulty to get into, like being a doctor pays
Yeah.
well, but it takes you 12 years of training to become an
Yeah.
actual like legit doctor. So it is hard, and like no one's just going to enter the industry and start making X amount of money in 3 months. Well, some people do, but most of us won't.
Yeah. So here's my journey and take it as you will. Like, first of all, I didn't have focus when I was learning to code. That's why it took me like way longer to learn. I tried to learn everything. I should have stuck just with front end or like back end or whatever. Just one thing, make sure you have like really structured. But number one, it took me like 3.5 years to get to a point where I was able to get a job. So I literally got hired when I was 39 years old. So if you're older, over 30, whatever, 40, like it's possible. But like the biggest mistake was trying to learn too much. And by the way, when I got my job, it was like right when the pandemic was like, it didn't quite blew up yet, but people were like starting to be like, something's happening, like whatever. So, like I got hired at that time with a company that, because I had no experience. My past experience was like I used to own a Brazilian martial arts school, so it literally not relatable to anything I was doing coding. So I was so afraid that no one's gonna hire me. So the first job I got, I took, and my first job literally paid $13.75 as a React developer. Don't ever do that. Don't sell yourself short. You should at least make more money. But I was like so scared that I was like, I just need a job. I need to get in the door so I could build that experience. So I literally worked there while working at a local supermarket just so I could make my ends meet. But here's the crazy part, and I probably should have left the company way earlier. But and don't do this. Don't work for $13.75, please. Like, have some respect for yourself. But after a year and a half, I went from $13.75 to like $40 an hour. Like, it's like, and to me, like having the pains and gains, like, and like struggling through stuff, like it was worth for the experience. And I guess the thing that I'm saying, like, you might start where you might be making 50, maybe whatever. Even if you make 45, like it depends on the area you live. You might make 60, 70, 80 like to start, but like just have realistic expectations. But just know after a year and a half, like your second job is going to be a little bit more. Like after three, like I literally believe in like, 2 to 3 years, you could get to a point where you could be making six figures. Like, and some people be like, it's not fast enough. But like to your point, Cody, you were saying like, most high paying jobs, they're high paying for a reason. Like a doctor takes 12 years to get to a certain income. And for me, like the fact that 2 to 3 years, you could go to a six-figure income as a developer, depending where you live, like that's pretty phenomenal, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I always hear stories of people making like huge amount of money in software engineering. Like you'll see those YouTube videos where it says like a bunch of like almost like close to $1 million in like salary. And I'm like, this seems like clickbait. There's no way an
Yeah,
engineer is worth that
no,
much. Like,
no.
okay, an engineer is good. They can make apps and stuff, but is their engineer really worth that much money? I
Yeah,
personally don't think so. Like,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
someone
No, that
asked, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's like super. Like, I agree with you. I feel like the people that say they make $1 million is because they probably solved some sort of business problem and they have a product or like whatever, but not as like a person who just codes. Like there's definitely a cap on that for sure, unless you work for like I guess Amazon or Facebook, if you still work there, where they like to have higher salaries. But
They pay you a lot, but they might fire you.
yeah, exactly. But
Yeah, someone asked, what is the minimum salary in today's economy you think a junior dev should be making? When I first got hired, this is 2013. I had a computer science degree and I got 60,000 salary. I don't know, after inflation and whatnot, maybe it's a little bit higher, maybe it's 70.
Yeah,
If you have a computer science degree, if you don't, I don't really know. It's kind of unfair. They look at the degree and they'll give you more.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but
What I would, yeah,
yeah,
what I would say, like, for me, like the range, like, cause I literally, when I got hired in my company, like his reasoning for, and I know this is messed up, unfair, the fact that like I got paid so little is because number one, he's like, you don't have any experience. Number two, you don't have a college degree. Uh, and so it is unfair. But at the same time, I feel like there's plenty of jobs now where like it's not uncommon. The range is probably between like 45 to 65, like as a junior dev, and maybe you get more. Um, uh, that's something that I would kind of plan on earning, just to have like a realistic expectation. And after like a year and a half, you'll definitely be able to get more money. But just take those things into consideration. Degrees do matter. Like a lot of people ask me, like, do I prefer self-taught? Do I prefer like coding boot camps or prefer a degree? I tell, if you able to, like I would have went and got a computer science degree. The only reason I'm not doing it now is because I'm like in my early 40s. I kind of don't feel like going and getting more student loans debt. But if you're young and you have like you live in a country where your education is subsidized, or you're in a position where you're able to take on the cost of like the degree, go get the degree. That's definitely worth it. And if you can't,
yeah.
you self-taught works, coding boot camps work.
I think definitely look at your whatever privilege you may or may not have and try to incorporate that. Because for me, like my college was paid for, and I had a bunch of in-state tuition. Like I think
Nice.
state of Florida pays for like 75% of all
Wow,
your
nice.
education. So I was like, am I going to have enough discipline to sit there and try to code myself for a year or two?
So hard.
Or do I need someone to like force me to like pass my classes, or my dad's going to yell at me or something? So that's why I personally like the college approach. But I will say that I learned more in the first 6 months of my real time job, my full time job, than I did in 4 years of college. So take that as you what you want. Like I think you're going to learn a lot more on the job when you get hired than you will with any of these boot camps or degrees or self study. Like once you actually get hired, that's when like the real learning starts, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. That's been exactly my experience. The first 6 months of my job, I learned more than I did in like the initial 3.5 years that took me to get it. And the thing about like college, I know like there's people that want to go against the grain and be like, no, I could do this, and you can. But if you're young enough, like going to college, it's not just about learning the thing and getting a degree. That's important, but just the social aspect of being in college, and also the friends that you make will lead into opportunities in the future. Like, so I think people should not disregard that aspect as well. And degrees do count for sure.
Yeah, it's like they do teach some stuff that's kind of translatable, but
Yeah.
yeah. How much time do you have? There's some more questions. If you have time, we can keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, I got some time. Yeah.
Okay.
It's Sunday
Yeah.
morning. Like I'm not, I'm good.
Cool. Cool. Let's see. Just go ahead and go through here. See
Nice.
how to use transactions in Strapi. I'm not sure what that means. Like database transactions.
Like or like when people buy stuff,
Yeah, like
like,
Stripe or something.
yeah, you could literally integrate Stripe. That's my preferred way of doing things.
Someone says Kay says I'd say anywhere between 40 to 70,000 Julio Martinez, depending on
Yeah,
skill.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. That makes sense.
It's worth noting that like most companies, when they first hire someone who's never worked before, like they know that person's not going to be able to really contribute that much, especially if the
Yeah.
project is big.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we hire senior engineers on our project and it takes 3 months for them to even get up to speed to be
Yep.
able to contribute. That's how big the software system is. So the first year, like you're not getting paid much because you don't really contribute that much. But if they don't give you a decent raise or some type of salary bump after 2 years, I would probably look for another job
Yeah.
and try to get that like 20%
Targeting.
raise, 20% raise or something.
Yeah, here's actually a good story that I learned again
Sure.
after the fact is because I worked for very little money at the beginning, which was fine, but like after you work at a company for 6 months, like try to go and apply to a bunch of places just so you have a counter offer that you could have. Then that way you could talk about it in your next review, be like, hey, this company, this is like what they're paying. And you could have that bargaining chip. Because when I got hired at Strapi, the last company that I was leaving, like my boss, like he didn't want me to go, you know? And when I told him, hey, I got hired at Strapi, that's the company I was really excited about because I use their product all the time, is the greatest. And he literally said to me, like, whatever they're paying you, like, I'm going to pay you and I'll add extra. He didn't even ask me how much they were paying me because he was like, I just want you to stay. And I was like, man, you should have said that like 6 months ago. But
Nice.
but no, I mean, I didn't like obviously burn like bridges. We're still in a really good relationship, but the power of having like another like quote from somebody else to use as a bargaining chip, I was like, wow, this is actually pretty good idea. So moving forward, basically, that's what like my strategy now.
Yeah, and then also going off of that, like try to stay connected to people who you worked with who might have left, because on the current project I'm on, like I think almost like 90% of the team quit within like 3 months
Wow.
after the great, what was it called? The great it was like the tech
Resignation,
yeah, the great
the good,
resignation.
which is
Everyone quit.
ridiculous. Yeah.
And then I basically asked everyone, how much more did you get as a raise? And then after everyone told me like 20%, I went to my company. I'm like, I want a 20% raise, and they gave it to me. So it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
If
just
you don't
definitely,
ask, they're not going to give it to you. That's the one basic
yeah.
lesson like I'm learning now.
But usually it's better to get a raise if you like where you're working
Yep.
than to like have to go and switch jobs and like
Yeah.
go through the whole process.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone says, Kay says, oh wait, I think I skipped a bunch. Hold on. I'm sorry. Let's see. Yeah, this is the next one, I think. Or is this one? Is freelancing beneficial in 2022? I personally would never do freelancing myself. It's just so much extra work. Like finding the clients is probably like the hardest part. And then what I've seen on people who do freelancing is once they find a couple of clients, usually the work just keeps on getting from those same clients. So it's almost like you're just working full time for these clients. And at that point, it's like I'd rather just have a full time job with that security. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Paul, about
Oh no,
freelancing.
I have lots of thoughts. So I used to be self-employed, like because I used to use an operated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, and people are like, well, it's not related to like web dev. No, it's not, except from the fact that when you're self-employed, the person that's responsible to pay you is you. So if you suck at getting clients, you're not going to get paid. If you suck at getting those clients to pay you, because some people, believe it or not, will be like late on payment or they won't want to pay you, like that also sucks. Also, like you're responsible for 100% of dealing with that client. So if you do bad work and they're not happy with it, that's something you will have to deal. So for me, like starting a business, I think it's basically that's what freelancing is. It's a very honorable goal to have, and I want to be self-employed at some point myself. But to me, it's the hardest thing to do, because not only do you have to be really good at development, you also have to be good at all those other things. And so people might sell you like how to make bajillion dollars, like being a freelancer course, but most self-employed or businesses fail, like majority of them do. So like the chances are already against you. So my tip is get a job first, build experience, and then if you have like a cool product or you feel comfortable or you have an easy way of getting clients because you're good at that, then you could transition. But I would never go freelancing first. It's really, really difficult to do.
Yeah. Plus, I don't know if the person who asked this is related, like in relation to Upwork or Fiverr. Like those
Worst.
freelances, like we can't even, as an American, like
You can't compete.
we can't even think about doing it because we're gonna get paid $5 or $10 for like
Yeah.
10 hours of work, which barely even buys you like a Big Mac at McDonald's.
Yeah.
So for our perspective, at least my perspective is different. So if you live in a different country and you want to do Upwork, maybe it'll
100%.
actually pay the bills more than here, but it's just not viable.
Yeah, exactly the same thoughts. Like the people that so if you live in a country where like, the pay is like not the same as like US, like Upwork does become, like you said, Cody, like a viable option where you're able to make more than what you locally make in your country. But like any US person will not be able to make um, that much money on Upwork. And I actually searched like what's the average income hourly from Upwork. it's $25 an hour, which is kind of insane if you think about it. That means like the low is really low, and then there's maybe like 1% of people that make like maybe 60 or 70 or whatever.
Yeah, and again, like growing that Upwork profile, like even with my experience, I tried doing it for like a couple of days. Like I made a profile and tried to like bid on different projects. And there's like 40 other people bidding on the same project offering like the lowest rates possible. So it's like there's no way I can even compete with that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone says, what do you think about layoffs in big tech at the moment? Any thoughts, Paul?
No, I don't know. Like, I don't know too much about like the big tech companies, and I don't know how it works, but it is what it is. When I talked to a friend from a big company, he said that when the economy was good and a lot of companies had like money, they just overhired. And so you could always look at it as they're just correcting for overhiring. It's not that they're laying people off. It's just, I feel like that a lot of company went like on the hiring process the year before, and overhired. And that's just an opinion, but that's what he told me. And so I'm like, that kind of makes sense. But due to the uncertainty and the recession, like a lot of companies do have hiring freezes and some people are laying off. So it is a thing. Although if I get laid off, I maybe get unemployment. I don't get no 3 month severance thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think I was talking to someone on my Discord. It was basically saying like during COVID, everyone was inside, so everyone was like flocking to just like these online services. Everyone started working from home,
Yep.
so like there's a big drive to like get those tech companies' business. Like you imagine Grubhub and whatever, like the delivery services, those
Yep.
things boomed. Now COVID's like quote unquote dying out or it's kind of over. Now there's not as much demand, and then also there was like the stimulus package put a bunch of money into the economy, so people were more willing to like buy things. But again, like that's kind of died down as well. So
Yep.
I think it's exactly what you said, Paul, where like they over hired a bunch of people and now they're just cutting people because they made a bad projection on like where the economy was going.
Yeah, here's an interesting like take also. I was kind of like surprised at this. So I go to this local meetup. I live in Austin. I go to Remix Austin meetup, and it's hosted by this guy Brooke, who works for HEB, which is a local grocery chain, which has a pretty serious like tech department, or like whatever, the development department. They actually have a really nice space. But every time I go to the meetup, like they're always hiring, where I talk to a bunch of people and they're like, oh, we have a company freeze. Like we're not hiring anybody, especially in Q4. And every time I go to the meetup, Brooks like, we're hiring, we're hiring, we're hiring. And then I'm like, I literally asked him, I'm like, why are you always hiring? Like, what the hell's going on? I'm like, aren't you worried about recession? He's like, well, our industry is, nobody's like 1000% recession proof, but he's like, everybody needs to eat. You know what I mean? And so like there are some companies that just weather recessions better because they need to provide that service no matter what. And so I would say if there's a recession and you're trying to break into the industry, you could apply to any company you want, but at the same time, try to identify some of the companies. Maybe you're not going to be like super excited. Like I think like anything where you work is exciting, but some people think otherwise. But look for those companies that their service that needs to happen regardless, like if there's a recession or not. And because there will always need people to work.
Yeah, and it's also worth investigating. Like I think this is only affecting like those big tech companies that might deal with a lot of AdSense and ads.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to do more research, but I mean, I don't think my company has been affected at all from what's going on. So I think
Yeah.
it's a very specific niche of companies that are like just cutting people for some reason. I don't know if it's like a trend that's going around Silicon Valley where like this company did it, so another company's doing
Yeah,
it,
let's do
and
it.
they're cutting off all these things that all these people that they wanted to fire, but sometimes it's
Here's
very hard to fire people.
Yeah, here's another thing like I've noticed, and I don't know if it's like if I agree with it or not. Like some companies, what they will do, and I think it's mostly to do with this overhiring process, but a lot of times like they will lay some people off and then they will right away like hire a bunch of contractors, which is like kind of weird. But apparently it's like common as well. Like every business has certain part of their workforce is contract based, which is kind of interesting because I have a friend who actually took that route to break into the industry, where he kept sending his resume, but he was kind of getting declined. So what he did is he hooked up with a contracting agency, like a really big one. I forgot what it's called. And he basically got a job at a big tech company because they basically use that contractor firm to hire a bunch of contracts. And so that's another route people could take.
Yeah, that's actually how I got my second job. Is like some guy called me who's part of like this little consulting contracting thing,
Nice.
and he basically just like sold my work to another company. So he would take like X amount of dollars an hour off my salary, and then
Yeah.
I get that much, which is a brilliant idea. Like if you want to make money, do what he was doing. Find a bunch
Yeah.
of devs, consult them out, and then have like a part of their pay chunk just go to
Yeah.
your
Yeah. You have to be really good at sales and
yeah.
to do that, by the way. So, but to me, like, I feel like that's another good strategy. So if you're having a hard time, like, use every avenue available to you to get hired, because at the end of the day, once you get your first job and you get the experience, like, it'll be much easier to get your second and third job and so on.
Someone says, what type of projects would you look for to hire someone with no work experience?
Yeah, what
Well,
are your thoughts on this?
I don't really do a lot of like work related to hiring people at my
Yeah.
company, but if I did, I'd probably look for one project that's like substantial. Like if you show me a
Yeah.
portfolio that has like a tic-tac-toe app
Yeah.
and then another like Connect 4 app, like I'm looking for something bigger. Like you tried to build out some type of, I don't want to, it doesn't have to be a full stack. Like even if you use something like Strapi, but then
Yeah.
you built out a real like
Yeah.
UI that did API requests and it had
Yep.
cool functionality. And maybe you start looking to like testing it or adding some type of GitHub actions to like automatically deploy it somewhere. That'd be pretty cool. But it might
Yeah.
be, that might be a lot.
I was gonna say that's actually like what I feel like the bare minimum is, like what you just described, which people like, oh my god, that's a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff, but if you want to stand out, that's what you got to do. So, like my approach, what I tell people, it's like you should have one cornerstone project that's substantial. And there's a channel called Coder Foundry. They do a lot of C# stuff, but their thing is like they tell you to build a bug tracker, and it's like, oh, it's so stupid. Why wouldn't everybody like? But if you think about what a bug tracker is, like it covers like you want to authenticate, so you learning about like roles and the whole authentication process. You have like bugs, like users. It's like complex enough where if you could create a bug tracker, in my opinion, or like a project management or whatever, like you literally covering all the things you mentioned, like how to work with an API, like how to make all the CRUD requests, how to like deal with these things. And then to me, it really simulates exactly what you're going to be doing like at your work on a day-to-day basis. So if you could do that, then you literally, in my mind, like ready to do the work, so that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, and it sucks. Some companies, when you go into the interview and you put like your portfolio on your resume, they don't even look at your portfolio. They
Yeah.
don't care about looking at your projects. They just ask you their quiz questions and then they hire you based on that.
Yeah.
So you'll put in all this effort on a side project, but if as long as like you get good at like talking about it and it's something that you can like talk about during an interview, like, oh, I built this, it's really cool, it does
Yeah.
this. I think that's a good selling point.
Yeah, like if you have no experience, I think the way you should look at your project is for you to showcase like how well you could talk about code. So even if they don't look at it, like if you feel comfortable, like this is actually, let me back up. This is why I tell people build stuff from scratch yourself. Don't rely on tutorials, is because everybody that I interviewed on my stream who's working on their project, I play this game with them where I randomly will pick a file with like a line number and I ask them, what does this do? And if you build your own project from scratch, basically what you're doing is you're like learning to be able to talk about your code because you actually understand what it is rather than following a tutorial. So even if the company doesn't work and look at your portfolio, like you have the confidence that you could talk about code in the interview process and know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely good to talk about code. That's one reason I made my YouTube channel, is like I was never good at
Same.
talking. But like when you start making videos of you explaining code and having to talk about code and communicating, you just become really good at it. So even if you like try doing that for practice, like record videos of you explaining code, put it on YouTube, but unlist it or just put it somewhere so you can go back and watch and be like, man, I need to improve on how to explain different concepts, because you're going to have to do that during an interview. And it's
Yeah.
the only way you get good at it is practicing.
Yeah, actually, I do have a quick question for you because everybody has their own opinions, like when to learn algorithms, how important are they? And I think like different positions or companies, they kind of weigh the process. Like some people will do more algorithm stuff. Some people will do like take home stuff with not as much algorithm stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I personally don't think the algorithms are ever used like in your day-to-day with web development. I mean, I think it's a good way to gauge someone's problem-solving skills.
Yeah.
Like if you can solve a beginner, intermediate leak code problem, I think it's a good sign that like you can solve problems.
Yep.
But I don't know if there should be so much emphasis in it. Like just because you fail like a simple leak code problem on an interview doesn't mean you don't know how to code. Like
Yeah.
there's people who can literally build out full stack applications and can probably fail most of these leak code problems.
Yeah.
Which actually goes into this question, and you can answer the second part of that, Paul, as well. Which would you value more, an applicant with a degree but no experience, or someone with no education but a great portfolio experience? And then also answer the question about the leak code stuff if you want to, Paul.
Yeah. So what is your thought on the initial question, I guess, since you're...
Oh, which would you value more of, with a degree but no experience? I mean, I think I'd always value someone with experience. Like, because even me with a degree, like half the stuff I learned in college, or maybe even 75% of the stuff I learned, like we learned how to deal with assembly language. How is that applicable to web development? We learned how to build a compiler. Like, how is that applicable to building websites? It kind of is, but it really isn't at all. So I don't think a degree is really, to me, as valuable as someone who comes in and says, hey, I built this like full stack app. Look at my portfolio project. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say like that's in the ideal world, that's exactly how I think it should have functioned. But the unfortunate part, like there's still companies, and maybe like it's changing, but I know in Europe, like people literally want you to have a degree, even if it's not in like computer science, which is like weird. So there are companies that put degree as the most important thing, and then there's companies that like, no, we really more care about the experience, what you could actually do. And then, like in my mind, I agree with what you said, Cody, but I do want to put it out there that there are some companies that like I've been declined because I don't have a degree, which is kind of my sign of like maybe that's the company I didn't want to work at anyway. But yeah, I think like experience 100% too.
Yeah, I think HR sometimes has like systems in check to just like throw resumes
Yep.
away if it doesn't say like bachelor's degree or something, which sucks, but
Yeah.
it's just the state of the society we live
To
in.
kind of add to that point, by the way, so I talked to a recruiter who told me, she's like, listen, like, yeah, we have a rule where we're not going to take any candidates without degree. Like, and a lot of companies actually have that automatic like resume decliner. It's like, no bachelor degree, you're out. But then she also, in the same sentence, told me they will make an exception. But what does not make the exception is those automatic readers. So I'll give you a quick story to kind of to tell you about why the like networking is super important. Is so I applied to IBM as a front end developer. I don't have a degree. That's one of the companies that like require you to have a degree, at least in their automatic resume checker. So I got declined, like that cold email, like, sorry, but we don't want you. And I told that story to a friend of mine who works at IBM to, and he's like, Paul, why didn't you just give me your resume and I would have put you and I recommended you? You would have at least gotten an interview. And like my degree was not even the question. It's like you would have gotten an interview, and then it's just up to you to show that you could do the work. And so after that story and that experience, I realized that sending resumes is good, but you'll always be beholden to whatever that auto detect feature is, because they get so many resumes that for them, that's the only way that it makes sense to filter people, right? Because they get thousands and thousands and thousands. So if you go to a friend who could refer you, like for instance, you referred me to a job that I got an initial call, like, and to me, that's a skill people should develop, is to build a connection of friends, and kind of not be afraid to take advantage of referrals. Even like recruiters or contract agencies, like you always will have better chance of someone actually looking at you than someone with your resume just automatically declines. So if you're having hard time finding a job and all you're doing is sending out resumes, like literally focus on the networking aspect of it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the companies, huge companies get thousands. Like imagine how many resumes Google gets every day. Like there
Yeah.
has to be some ways to like have a bar set that they just get rid of ones that they don't want to look at, which it's unfortunate because you're going to lose a lot of good talent that's under the bar or
Yeah.
under their threshold. But it's just a matter of, business to be able to be like efficient. Are you able to see all the questions and stuff? There's like so
Yeah.
many. I don't know
Yeah.
if
I
you want
see.
to like pick one.
See. Yeah. I'll take a look and find something good an answer.
It's the one problem when you get a lot of subscribers on your live
Nice.
live streams is you get so many questions and you can't answer them fast enough.
I know you're killing it. You're doing really good. I don't have that problem yet, thank God. But I can't imagine.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
Oh man,
If everyone would go subscribe to Coding After 30's channel
the
right now.
spam my comments with no. But that's the funny thing is like right now I'm like, oh, this is so manageable like on my streams. But I've seen some like people who have like crazy streams. I'm like, I can't even read the comments as fast as people post them.
And I think the problem is like I want to give authentic responses to these questions. Whereas when you get really big as a streamer, they just skip over half the questions. And the
Yep.
ones that answer, they give like a 1-sentence reply. Like, yep,
Yeah.
nope.
Yep. Nope. Yep.
I made a full stack burn.
Here's a good question, but I don't even know the answer, but I'll ask it. There's a question by Sirius. What tech stack is the most and least congested as of now? It's like an interesting question. Like, do you mean by like popularity that there's high competition for getting hired? I'm assuming like oversaturated tech stack to learn. I don't know.
That's what it sounds like to me, like oversaturated. I mean, I think it's like JavaScript. Like it's like the easiest thing to get into, although it's not an easy language to learn. It's the
But it's
easiest,
the
like
most saturated
yeah.
market.
There's tons of people trying to learn how to build front end UIs, so it's probably really saturated.
Yeah, I still tell people like for me in my mind, React and like JavaScript like way is front end the fastest way to find opportunity. It's not the only way, but in my case, like I still like give that advice, and I've seen people kind of take it and get hired as front end devs.
It's always good to also just apply to like random PHP jobs. Like if you really just want a job and you understand the basics of programming, like don't just limit yourself to, oh, I'm only going to apply for React. Like you could apply for PHP, you could apply for Python and hope that they hire you just because you know how to code in JavaScript.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can fire contractors a lot easier. Yeah. So I was kind of like going back to the other.
Yeah.
There's like laws where like if you fire someone, you can easily get sued because you fired them for a wrongful, what's it called, termination?
Yeah.
Which people are scared of, especially in Silicon Valley, probably.
Yeah. So, and different countries have different laws. So I work for a French company, and for French citizens, like the you can't just fire people. Like it's like a 3 to 6 month process. Where to the US, that law doesn't apply. So like for us, it's like, you could go. Like it literally, like there's we don't have the same laws. But I feel like, yeah,
I find that crazy. I mean, it's like
crazy.
It's good for like the average citizen.
Yeah.
But I feel like people can be very complacent and lazy at their job.
Yeah,
if they know they can't get fired.
I see that when. So here's my question, and I'm not gonna say anything to like because I don't want to call like people out, but I do see that when people kind of check out at their job, and when they know that it'll take a company 6 months to properly fire them, they'll literally just coast, do the bare minimum, and then literally it's like a mini vacation, and they already know that in 6 months they're gonna get like another job. And to me, like I don't blame them, because it's like by human nature we want to get the most benefit for the least amount of work. But at the same time, to me, it's like this part of dishonesty. Like you're already checked out, but you're milking the company for money. It's like, I don't know, but yeah.
I mean, I think people do that, which sucks. And you don't want to be on a team with people who are doing that, because you're like, dude, like I sent you a message like at 9 o'clock this morning and you got back to me at 4 p.m. Like, what have you been doing this entire 7 hours? But yeah, when I first got hired, I was a contractor, and it's funny because the company hired me and 2 other people at the same time. And like I was probably the most inexperienced. And about after 2 weeks, they fired 2 of those 3 that they hired. So I was the last one left, and they didn't fire me. So the whole time I was like literally just putting the fire under me, like learning as much as I could, because I'm like, dude, I'm gonna get fired because I'm a contractor. But I do think there is a more like being a contractor or knowing that you can get fired helps you really stay engaged in what you're doing, because you know that you could just be let go at any point, which is not a good thing to like live under. But as a beginner, like I think it actually helped push me faster to like learn.
Yeah. But whenever someone says like, oh, hire, fire, like whatever, like any position you could get hired, fired, not just like in like web dev, but I feel like it's such a in demand field compared to like all the other options you have. You're still like better off like than let's say doing something else that you've been like done in the past. At least for people who are like looking to switch careers. Like for me, like I wish I started to learn to code earlier, but even though like I'm in my 40s and I got my first job like when I was like 39, I still don't regret it because I still feel like I'm part of a field that still will have more opportunity to get hired. And another cool thing I like about development, like you're learning a skill where not only can you learn, like not only can you work for a company, yes, you could go freelancing too, but you literally have like a skill where if you have an awesome idea, you could create your own SaaS product. Like I have a friend who works as a developer, but he had this cool, interesting idea for a SaaS product and he did it and he's making like pretty good amount off his SaaS product. I'm almost like, why are you even working? Just work on your SaaS full time. But he just loves coding and he figured out. And I like the fact that not only do you have a high in demand skill compared to all the other industries, but also you're learning a skill that if you have a good idea, you'll able to like, bring it to fruition and probably make money off it,
Yeah, I think building a SaaS would be so much fun. It's just so much risk doing any type of startup. So you have to do it on the side.
Yeah, 100%. That's like I was going to say the caveat here. Don't ever like every person that I know who started like, I don't know that many, but like one or two people that started a startup, it was always on the side, and they all had like jobs until they either got seed money or they started making money. So definitely don't like quit everything and be like, they told us to start a SaaS business. No, don't do that.
I kind of gave up on that SaaS stream instead. I'm just like, I'll just do YouTube. YouTube seems like it's a side hustle that's going somewhere these days.
But the craziest thing, it's so insane how like if you do it right, you could literally make an income from YouTube, which in a way could be easier than starting a SaaS business and company, which is awesome. And I do see like not everybody, but I do see like some people will start on YouTube, and once it becomes successful, they'll just go all in YouTube and become like a YouTube person. To me, like I like people that kind of find that middle path where they do well on YouTube, but they still creating like development content and not like YouTube driven content, if that makes sense. Because I feel like if you get a lot of like people, like eventually you'll see like the videos that perform the best are the videos that are good for YouTube, and they might not be good for people like learning to code. Because there's plenty of videos in the tech category where you could watch the channel for like hours and hours and hours, but then at the end of it, you still haven't learned anything that improves you as a developer, and you're like, God. So
yeah, it's definitely a fine line between like entertainment and education and like I feel like the more popular you get on YouTube, the more you go towards like entertainment, just because that's like what people want.
The one channel that does it better than anybody is Fireship. Like
oh man,
the formula he figured out, it's like I learned something every time he puts out a video, and at the same time they're super entertaining, and I'm like, that dude is smart.
Yeah, his content's so good. It's like it's condensed so you can learn something new in like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Let's see, any more questions that you might see? I'll probably end the stream in like 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, no worries. Like it was fun. One is actually like I'm curious, is front end or back end more interesting? I think it just depends. That was like a question. Like, what do you like?
Yeah, lately I've been kind of getting tired of front end. No offense to anyone who likes front end. I think it's still fun to build UIs, but after you built like 100 forms that take in inputs and submit those inputs to a backend, you're kind of like, I don't want to work on this anymore. Because like a lot of the stuff that you use like for example, the StreamYard we're using right now, it has like a cool like chat panel on the right and has like a screen. But a lot of the projects don't have that. A lot of it's just a lot of like data entry, save the
Yeah.
data,
Yeah.
validate the data, show errors, and you do that over and over and over
Yeah.
again. So the backend is a little bit more interesting to me because you can like really design systems like what happens if 100 people were to hit this API endpoint at the same time, and then
Yeah.
you have to
With a
like think
break.
about that. But I know, Paul, would you consider yourself more of a front end engineer?
Yeah, I'm a more of a front end developer, but I agree with everything you just said. The reason I'm more of a front end because again, it's just pick a focus to get your foot in the door. But I'm transitioning into like to be able to call myself full stack. And you're right about like this whole idea. Like now, like I don't want to write CSS. I'll just use Tailwind for whatever, and I'm more interested on the actual logic that solves the thing and like makes the app do the things that it does. And so I'm leaning in that same direction because I feel like there's like and I look at it this way: if you like the UI stuff, you're like a web designer, UI designer. But if you're like a developer, like I think the goal should always be, the functionality of like the architecture of the actual app and how things work. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I can imagine if, like, let's say I was working at Figma and I had to work on building out the Figma UI, like that's a cool problem to solve, right? Like you have to figure out how to make a really fast, responsive, like canvas that you can put stuff onto.
Yeah.
But I don't know, a lot of projects are actually like internal UIs that are never seen by public users that you're going to be paid to work on. Like imagine working at Cisco and they have some user interface that you have to develop for their internal team of marketing people. Like that's what you might end up working on,
Yeah.
which is probably just going to be forms and maybe showing some charts and stuff.
Yeah. But hey, if you're paying the bills, then it is what it is. But like it does get more interesting. Like after you've been doing it for a while, to start solving more interesting problems.
Animations. I don't think I've ever actually added real animations to any of my like real products that I worked on in my life,
I
but
think,
they're cool.
yeah, I think animations and stuff like that, like to me, like you got to be an artist, and so like I think, like that to me, like that's like way harder for me. So I much rather just work on like the logic of the application stuff like that because there's a lot of cool stuff people do. Um, but my like here's my idea like thing for like web development, which is kind of interesting. A lot of people don't like this opinion, but I used to work at this like for this guy who made the ugliest looking websites, right? But he would write really good sales copy, like basically like text that describes the value of the product or whatever service you're offering so well that people just want to buy it. And like at the end of the day, like the ugly sites would like outperform like really pretty sites with like not good enough like copy. And to me, like it always blew my mind because at the end of the day, like people like when they go to a website, they're not really saying, and a lot of people are gonna hate this comment, they're not really saying, oh my God, this is the most amazing like website I've ever seen. Like there's a place for those, but in most cases they go to a website because they have a business need, they're trying to solve a problem, and they just want to know, is this product or this thing gonna solve the thing? And if you're in like an art industry, maybe it makes sense to showcase all that stuff, but in reality, like if it doesn't look like crap, like that's fine. But I know there's a lot of designers going to be like, you don't know what you're talking about. I know I don't know what I'm talking about, by the way. I never said I did, but that was my opinion right there.
We all just make it up as we go, and you all just listen
Exactly.
to us. I want to ask, do you work with UX and designers at your companies in the past? Like, do you have a team who like gives you
Yeah.
images?
Yeah. So my last company, like I literally was responsible for building like 80% of the project, and the 20% that I was not responsible is because we had a designer that designed like all the layouts, like all the like UI stuff, and they didn't use Figma, they used Photoshop for some weird reason. So I just worked off like Photoshop templates. But yeah, and then at Strapi we have like designated team, and we have our own like component library. So it does make things easier. So I don't even have to worry about it. And I feel like that's where like, I started say like people that really like design and the front end part of it, I like refer to them as front end designers. Like even though if I don't know if that's accurate, but anybody who's more interested in like the JavaScript portion of it, like yeah, they understand design, they know CSS. Like I look at them as web developers, like where they won't like they can make the design themselves, but what they're literally doing is they're taking a design and implementing it in code. Like so.
Yeah, I actually had a buddy that we used to work on a side project together, and he was basically he did all the HTML and CSS, and then he'd throw me the code, and I just hook it up to all the Angular like JavaScript logic.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of goes into what you're saying, where like he was more of like the web designer
Yeah.
who designed the UIs and made them look nice, and then I just hooked it up to the logic and functionality.
Yeah. There's a question from Omar I want to bring up. He says,
Oh
I've
yeah.
been using Strapi with Next for a while now. And I love it, but at the same time, I'm having some issues with V3 templates, and I think they're still not updated. Can you give me an info on that? So yes, we're now in like version 4. And so if you're using some of the starter templates, some of them might still be not updated to V4. And yeah, that is a thing. And so we're working on updating some of them, but right now, like the team is really focused on like going to the cloud. So it's not our top priority because for us, like most of the people that use Strapi, like they just like the Strapi part of it, and then they'll create their own front end. Like a lot of people like are not starting with like our front end templates because we try to be framework agnostic. So for us to have a favorite template almost like doesn't make sense because we much rather people use Strapi with whatever they want. I know someone asked if can you use Strapi with Astro? Yeah, you can. You could use it with Angular. You could use it with a Vue. You could use it with Next.js Remix. So at the moment, it's not a priority. So I do understand that. But if you have any questions about anything or need help, by the way, you could like go to Strapi Discord. I hang out there like a lot, and there's a lot of people that answer questions. So if you have a problem with a particular template, we could actually help you with that and figure it out. So yeah. Anyway.
Cool. Here's an interesting comment. So this person says, my friend in college couldn't code much. I did 90% of the work on a group project and made a whole game store e-commerce type thing for a project. Yet he has a job and I don't. He's really good at talking. And I think that is a good point that like there's a lot of people who know how to talk and they can market themselves and make them seem like they're really intelligent and really capable. But then when it comes to coding, they're just like average or not that great. So again, like talking during an interview and talking in general is something you got to work on, especially for a lot of our like a lot of developers are kind of like asocial or
Yeah.
antisocial. I don't know which one's the proper term for it, but so yeah, just I would say practice talking about the code, as Paul mentioned earlier in the stream, and like get good at communicating your thoughts and ideas. Maybe that's what he's did well at during an interview or something. If you guys both have like the same resume set up.
Yeah. What I would say, it sucks like if he took all the credit for your work. That's terrible, not a good friend.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would say I really big on having developers like try to do the best that they can, step out of their comfort zone and practice the social part of like talking, getting comfortable with talking about yourself. There's nothing wrong when you go to interviews, your job is basically to show how much of a value you could bring to the company. And part of that, like when you go to an interview, like nobody knows like you as a person, right? They don't know what to expect. So if you go to an interview and do zero talking, they're, it's going to be really hard for them to kind of see what you're about. So you need to develop that skill, even if it's not comfortable, to be able to talk about yourself. And I would kind of like, not like, I'm not joking about this. I would literally put myself especially at the beginning of that category where I might have not been like the best developer when I was looking for a job, but I was really good talking about the things that I did feel comfortable to present this image that I know kind of like the stuff that I do know, and also present myself in a way where like I'm willing to learn. I'm like very good at interacting with other people on the team. Like I'm a good listener, like all that other stuff. And I feel it helps to sell yourself. And so like we talked about this earlier. So if I had to say what's more important, just learning to code and then sending out your resumes and hoping one of them gets accepted, or it's learning to code and maybe not being the best developer, but then really focusing on your soft skills and really like reaching out to people and like I'm going to say marketing yourself, but like kind of showing your value to others and being like vocal about it, that's way longer and faster way of getting a job. And I'll tell you from my experience, and this is unfair, like it's a lot of times of, and I'll use like a couple examples. One example, my first, like I talked to many people who went to boot camp, who went like, even like computer science degree, like
like if you have a degree, it's great, but like let's say self-taught bootcamp, we'll keep it to those two. The average number of resumes people would send out would be like 300 to 400 resumes, and they would get like maybe 5 interviews and maybe 2 job offers. So that's a lot of resumes to send. I have never ever sent that many resumes in my life. And people will say it's not fair, and it is not fair. And this is why I tell you it's very important to learn like networking and getting out there. But I always had friends in my network that were developers with whom I was like, hey, can you take my resume and refer me to a position? And that's how I got most of my interviews. And even like through YouTube, I met Cody, and he was like, hey, my company is hiring. And he's like, do you want me to send your resume? I was like, yeah, Cody, it'll be great. And actually I had a phone interview. I ended up not going with the job, but I got it because Cody recommended me to his company. And so the best and the fastest way, it's not so much sending your resumes, but it's like having a network of friends who know you, trust you, to feel comfortable referring you to their company.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I will say that all the jobs I've gotten have all been through connections. My first job was I was in college, and we had a company come in, and like we did like demos to the company. And then after I graduated, that company hired me. So I was like a connection. And then after that, the next job, my brother's friend called me who had this consulting firm. And he's like, hey, do you want a job? And I got that job through my brother's friend. So it's just been a bunch of connections that got me to where I am today. So it's good to talk, as Paul mentioned. And also it's good to like, I mentioned this in a recent video I did where during an interview, sometimes people just want to make sure that you're going to be a fun person, not fun, but like a dependable, like positive person to work with. So if you can give off those positive vibes during an interview, and you can show that like, you seem like a real genuine person to work with, that's going to probably sell more than like, can he do a loop or something? It's just from my perspective. I'd rather work with people who are willing to learn and are positive. It might not be that great at coding than to work with someone who's super, super good at coding, but is arrogant and like doesn't take any advice from anybody. But let's see.
There's one specific question. Again, I just want to quickly answer from Omar. He says, thank you for the answer, man. Making a front-end agnostic framework is quite logical to choose. There were some problems using Postgres DB with Docker is now solved with V4. Yeah, so it works. And a good resource would be if you go to our documentation, look at the Docker, or just type Strapi Dockerize. You'll be able to find actually, like, I could send the link in private chat if you want to share it on YouTube. But one of our community members created this plugin, and it's mentioned in the docs, called Dockerize, which makes creating Dockerized containers and deploying them like super simple. Like, I don't know that part of development that well, but even I was able to figure out how to use Dockerize to make it easier to deploy containers. So you could take a look at that. But yeah, it should be working. Working fine.
Someone says I have a mean face in regards to interviews. Don't know how to help on that. You gotta just smile more or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, yeah, you got, so I mean, it's unfair, but there's such a big part of like, the more social you are and more likable you are, it does make the interview process like a little bit easier. At least that's been in my like experience. So, but network is huge. Like, I can't stress that enough. It's like if learning to code, like, it's about like 20%, and getting hired is like faster, is like the 80% of like networking and building connections. 100%.
For sure. So yeah, the stream has been going for 2 hours, almost 40 minutes.
Wow.
Do you have any like final questions you wanted to ask me, or like if you want to do a stream again in the future, like maybe?
Oh man, like I would always love to stream. You're such a cool dude. Like,
cool.
I like hang out with like positive people. I was gonna say like more of a question to you, and I probably, if I had more time to like watch more streams, I'm sure you probably mentioned this, but what got you excited in starting and like programming? Did you always know this is something you wanted to do, or did you kind of like,
Yeah, I think it was. I did a lot of gaming as a kid, like middle school, high school, even elementary school. I was literally always on the computer, and I've always had a dream of like building my own games and stuff. So I started like diving into code for that. passion. Obviously, I never got into game development because it doesn't pay as well as web development, and it's a lot more stress. But that's kind of how I got into it, and just like I wanted to figure out like how do these people draw 3D models on a page? Like I thought that was so cool. And then like I guess the entry point was in high school and middle school. I started joining like I think middle school I did like a web development class where they taught you HTML and CSS, and just they also taught me Visual Basic in another middle school class, or is that a high school class? It's one of those classes. And then in high school, and then I also did like a Java 1 and a Java 2 class. So
Oh
like I
my
got my
gosh.
introductions to programming back in middle school and high school. So I don't know if I really knew what I was doing back then, but I felt like I kind of like had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of got all into it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I just so glad that I ended up kind of switching over and doing development, because it's such a rewarding field. Because I found out that if I did a job where I didn't have something that I created and had like a physical manifestation of like something I built, like it was very hard to find kind of reward and that fulfillment. So like for me, like doing development stuff been like very fulfilling like role. And like what one advice like would you give to someone who just starting out to code and looking to get into this industry, I guess, before we go?
But what advice would I give someone who's trying to get into this industry?
Or like learning to code, like what do you feel like it would help him, you know?
Dang, I think one thing that I wish I did was find like a mentor, right? So like when I was trying to learn to code, find one person or two people, or even like a community. Like back then there was no Discord groups. There's just like Stack Overflow and like random, there's like old forum
Yeah.
PHP BB things.
Yeah.
It's like that's really the only way you could find how to code. But I wish I found actually like one person I can just like ask random questions to and like help them guide me and keep me motivated, because a lot of the times like I would sit down and try to learn the code, and then I get distracted and go do other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would just try to stay focused, try not to get distracted, find a mentor to help guide you, or even a Discord group of a lot of people. Yeah, here's a self promotion. Go ahead and
There you
join my
go.
Discord. Got a bunch of people in there.
100%. Yeah. And no, like I think you're doing like an amazing job. It's great to see your channel growing, which is like phenomenal, because it's good to have like cool people in the space that really love what they do. So like, by the way, thank you for inviting me on stream. Thank you to all your awesome members that are in chat. And yeah, anytime you want to do streams, like I'm always up for it. And I actually like the idea that you mentioned, that something you do at your company where you do pair programming, where like two developers like code together. I think that's like a really cool idea for anybody to do. Find a buddy and code. So if you wanted to do like a pair programming stream, I think that'd be cool too as well.
Yeah, I think that should be the goal for next time. We just have to think of a cool idea to like help stay focused. One thing I don't like about streaming is that like you get all these comments in the chat, and then like we take time to answer the comments, and then the actual like pair programming thing. So we just have to like, I guess, make an agreement that we'll just only answer some of the questions that pop up in the chat. But I think it'd be a good thing for people to view, like two coders actually collaborating. Have you done any pair programming before?
Not like on stream. Like I did some like with friends, but not enough. So I kind of got jealous like that at your job. It's like a part of your work. I think it's actually a good thing that everybody should do. So I'll be like really up for it.
Cool. Yeah, the way we do it at our work is like, we'll work for like 10, 15 minutes on one person's computer, and then we'll commit and push that stuff to GitHub. And then we'll switch screen shares, and then the other person will pull those changes. I don't know if there's probably better ways. I don't know about giving screen control to people.
You know what you could do? You could use a VS Code live feature, where you basically have like a VS Code that you could run on your computer, and then people could just use VS Code instead of like giving like complete screen share. That's like a way.
Let's try getting that set up next time. And then we'll plan for another stream.
Yeah, and I don't blame you not giving people control. People do some weird stuff on streams sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, let's give me full control of your computer. And they do something to your YouTube account or something. Not that you do that, Paul. But
no, but I don't blame you. Like, I heard some horror stories, so I'm always like reluctant to do anything. I'm like, yeah, sounds good.
I was gonna say, and it doesn't even have to be a stream. Like we could just do a pre-recorded video.
That's cool too. Yeah, 100%.
those seem to work really well.
Yeah, I'm done.
But yeah,
All
let's
right,
just
cool.
wrap this up. Be sure to go check out Coding After 30. I'll put the link in the chat one more time. Go give him a subscribe. Go press the bell icon on his page. And go
and if
check
you're
out Strapi.
and if anybody here is not a subscriber to Cody, I don't know what the hell you're doing, to be honest.
Yeah, go ahead and press the like button, subscribe button, bell
smash like
icon.
button. And again, like I'm like for me, like I mean, I'm so excited because I like concept of YouTube, but I know YouTube could get completely crazy with people that I'm not saying it's all channels, but there's a lot of things that they say they're developers, but at the end of the day, they end up being salespeople. And one thing that I appreciate about like your channel is that you're like a real developer and you like do development stuff, and like your experience doesn't come from like telling thing just for the sake of use, but it's like literally providing like life-changing value. And I think that's important to make sure that people don't get caught up in the hype and really follow people that kind of achieve the same things you're trying to achieve, you know, and focus on the learning part than just, you know, mindlessly watching YouTube videos. So thank you for putting out like really good quality content.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad everyone finds it really useful. Let's see. Any other final thoughts? I don't know, but yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for joining. I had fun. I learned something about Strapi. I learned a little bit about Next 13 beta mode. And everyone, be sure to check out the stream / my channel. Look for notifications for when we pull Paul back on for another pair programming live stream.
That'll be awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great one.
See y'all.